My husband beat me to death when I was about to give birth, just because I reminded the crab-obsessed mother-in-law that dead crabs are poisonous and can cause poisoning. The mother-in-law then fell to the ground, throwing a tantrum and accusing me of looking down on her. My husband forced me to kneel and bow my head to apologize to my mother-in-law. I refused. He swung his fist and hit me. It killed me twice. When I opened my eyes again, seeing my mother-in-law happily returning with a big bag of dead crabs, I said nothing and loved the dead. I dare not interfere with the affairs of the king of hell anymore. One awaking from the darkness, that heart-wrenching despair seemed to linger. I suddenly opened my eyes, finding myself lying on the bed in the bedroom. Unbelievingly, I stared at the familiar surroundings before me. For a moment, I was dazed. Then I realized I had been reborn on the very day I was killed. In my previous life, I got poisoned because I said that dead crabs shouldn't be eaten. My mother-in-law immediately fell to the ground, rolling and screaming that I was disrespecting her. My husband Han Xiang has always been a filial and obedient son, so he couldn't stand this. He forced me, who was about to give birth, to kneel and bow my head to apologize to my mother-in-law. I don't feel like I'm in the wrong. Naturally, I refused. Han Xiang, furious, raised his fist and threatened me. If you don't bow to my mother and apologize, I'll beat you to death. My mother-in-law wept bitterly, but her eyes couldn't hide the smug satisfaction. I became increasingly stubborn, refusing to kneel and apologize, no matter what. Han Xiang swung his thick fist toward me. Amidst my screams of agony, the mother-in-law sat beside her, cracking sunflower seeds with a sarcastic tone. These modern daughters-in-law are outrageous, showing no respect to their mothers-in-law at all. A son should properly discipline his wife for his mother, or else it would be a waste of the mother's efforts in giving birth and raising him. The father-in-law merely glanced at her coldly and said in a low voice, "A daughter-in-law who can't bear a son dares to disrespect her mother-in-law. She deserves to be beaten to death. That won't stop me from finding Xiaoxing another wife who can give birth to a son." Ever since the Han family used their connections to get me an ultrasound and found out the baby in my belly is a girl, my in-laws would occasionally bring it up to mock me. It's as if I'm a sinner to the whole Han family for not being able to conceive a son. Han Xiang, with the support of his parents, swung his fists more forcefully. "I'll beat you to death, you spoiled brat. See if you dare to look down on my mom again in the future. If there's a desire to accuse, there's no lack of excuses." I fought back with all my might, but how could a pregnant woman about to give birth stand a chance against a man? My lower body was beaten until it bled. Blood flowed all over the ground. They were afraid I would call the police, so they refused to take me to the hospital. They stood by coldly as I died from excessive blood loss, losing both my life and that of my unborn child. Try again. I will never again stand in the way of their journey to the underworld. Love the dead. I dare not interfere with the death god's affairs again. Thinking of the child who died with me in my past life, I gently stroked my high, swollen belly, choking back tears. "Baby, this time, Mom will definitely protect you." My growling stomach made it impossible to stay in bed any longer. As soon as she opened the door, she saw her mother-in-law rushing in, carrying a large bag of crabs. Smiling brightly, she said to Han Xiang and his son sitting in the living room watching TV, "You two love eating crabs the most. I bought a lot today, enough to fill you up." She glanced at me again, feigning regret. "Too bad, Xiaoyu, you're due to give birth soon and can't eat crabs. You'll just have to watch the three of us eat them." Her tone was so fake it was nauseating. All I heard was pure relief. Fortunately, I, an outsider, won't compete with them for the crabs. I curled my lips into a silent sneer. How dare I eat such a fine dead crab? Better leave it all for your family of three to enjoy too. I pretended to smile sweetly. "Mom, you guys eat the crab. I'll just have the vegetable noodles." As soon as I walked in yesterday, my mother-in-law set the rules for me. During the pregnancy, she could only eat vegetable noodles. She said she had eaten like this during her previous pregnancy, and that's how she gave birth to Han Xiang, a healthy and intelligent child. I said this diet was too monotonous and lacked nutrition. My mother-in-law scolded me for being a greedy daughter-in-law. She wailed and cried to Han Xiang, saying I was disobedient and hard to take care of. She insisted that Han Xiang take me back to the city to give birth, and she would personally take care of me during my confinement. Han Xiang was a lazybones through and through. If he really took me back to the city, the burden of caring for both me and the baby would fall entirely on his shoulders. How could he possibly agree? He had a fierce argument with me, insisting that I must eat vegetable noodles during my pregnancy. He even said my mother had given birth before and had experience, so I should definitely listen to her. My parents are already dead, and I have no brothers or sisters. My mother-in-law gave me a warning right from the start. Besides agreeing, what other choice do I have? Living a second life, I now realize how foolish I was back then. Agree, to hell with that, I should just turn around and find a postpartum care center to stay at. Why put up with this humiliation? Fortunately, it's not too late now. My mother-in-law was pleased with my understanding and nodded with a smile. Pregnant women preparing for childbirth should eat green vegetable noodles. They are light, healthy, and won't interfere with a natural delivery. I smiled without saying a word and walked into the kitchen. I didn't know until I looked. Once I saw it, I was satisfied to the point of laughing. My dear mother-in-law truly lives up to being a death machine. When there's no danger, she herself becomes the greatest danger. Look at all the wonderful things in this kitchen: green potatoes, moldy rice cakes, black and bean curd sheets, a dazzling array. Too much to take in at once. I don't know how many days it's been, but I still can't bring myself to throw it away. No wonder Han Xiang said I'm not as good as his mother at managing a household, so frugal. I feel ashamed by comparison. Holding back the smile in my eyes, I calmly took the noodles and glanced at them. Good, not expired. I turned back and picked a few small green vegetables from the field. I added just a little salt and made a bowl of plain vegetable noodles and clear broth. No way, those soy sauce and vinegar condiments, the liquid stained with black mold spots. I dare not use them. I finished my vegetables and plain noodles. The mother-in-law's family of 3 had almost finished their steamed crabs. According to an incomplete count, each person had eaten no fewer than 4 crabs. I rested my chin in my hand, pondering to myself, I wonder if 4 dead crabs could kill someone. No, to be on the safe side, I should give them a little more help. I licked my lips, making a greedy expression. Mom, this crab looks big and delicious. How about I have the last one? My mother-in-law raised her eyebrows, glaring at me coldly, scolding. What are you eating? Which pregnant woman in labor eats crab? Are you trying to make the baby cold? As if fearing I'd reach out and steal a bite, she waved her hand. She turned to Han Xiang, who was sipping his drink, and said, Xiao Xiang, you eat the last one. Don't let your greedy wife eat it and sneak a bite. The greedy wife watched eagerly as Han Xiang picked up the last crab and ate it with great enjoyment. Her heart blossomed like a kaleidoscope, filled with delight. Eat up, eat up. Finish it just in time to head to the Yellow Spring Road. I happily returned to my room, waiting for the Grim Reaper's scythe to harvest my enemy's life. 3. The prelude to death soon began. The in-laws started fighting over the bathroom. Father-in-law, Tsuihua, come out quickly, let me use it. Mother-in-law, just bear with it for a moment, my stomach still hurts. The mother-in-law's house is in the countryside, with only one toilet, so the mother-in-law occupied the toilet and wouldn't come out. The father-in-law couldn't help but completely soiled his pants. It stank to high heaven. It was as embarrassing as it could possibly be, but in the bedroom, Han Xiang's symptoms were not due to stomach upset. Instead, it was projectile vomiting. He couldn't find his phone and whispered to me for help. Wife, quick, call 120. You dream on. How could I possibly call 120 to save him otherwise? Wouldn't it be pointless that I learned from his past life to hide my phone? In my previous life, I was beaten nearly to death by him, couldn't find my phone, and for the sake of the child in my womb, I crawled like a dog to Han Xiang's feet, clutching at the hem of his pants, begging him desperately to call 120 to save the child in my womb. After he coldly pulled down his pant leg, this is what he said. What 120? The book of life and death in the underworld has already determined life and death. Everything is predestined. My heart turned to ashes as I breathed my last. Never thought that in 2 lifetimes I'd still have the chance to say those words back to him. Han Xiang, why are you calling 120? The book of life and death already has your fate written. Everything is predestined. After saying that, I felt my breast hyperplasia had improved significantly. Truly refreshing. Han Xiang trembled with anger, staring at me in disbelief. Seeing that I didn't move at all, he finally realized I was serious. He glared at me, pointing at me with a shaking hand, calling me a venomous woman. He accused me with the harshest words, saying I was heartless and had abandoned him in his time of need. Unfortunately, I turned a deaf ear. Seeing that his harsh words were ineffective, he struggled to roll over onto the ground, crawling like a dog. He grabbed my pant leg, begging, Xiaoyu, please, please, save me. I mimicked the way he had in his previous life, pulling the pant leg out of his hand. I watched coldly as he struggled on the edge of death. Han Xiang's eyes were filled with deep despair, like smog obscuring the sky and sun. He still wanted to live, calling out to his parents with all his strength. Unfortunately, his parents were currently fully engaged in a battle for the bathroom. Where could anyone hear his faint, mosquito-like cries, watching his face grow paler and paler, listening to his breathing grow weaker and weaker, until the connection was completely severed? My expression remained indifferent, but my heart was pounding. Another half-hour passed before I stretched and turned around. Before leaving the room, I rubbed my face hard, pretending to be flustered, shouting, Mom, Dad, come Quickly, Hanxiang, something happened, he's gone. Hearing that Hanxiang was in trouble, my in-laws forgot about their aching bellies. They rushed over anxiously. Xiaoxiang, what's wrong? I wiped away my tears and pointed to Hanxiang lying stiff and cold on the bed, with no warmth at all. Stammering, heartbroken, I woke up and called him. He was already gone. My mother-in-law raised her hand and slapped me. You little wretch. How dare you curse Xiaoxiang? He just drank a little too much. Sleeping a bit deeper, my father-in-law kicked me fiercely. You filthy slut. Now that Xiaoxiang is awake, let's see how I'll make him teach you a lesson. I already knew this family's true nature inside out, so how could I let them actually hurt me? My mother-in-law's hand merely brushed lightly against my cheek. My father-in-law's foot hadn't even touched my stomach yet. I immediately fell to the ground, clutching my stomach and crying out in pain. My mother-in-law sneered, I'll endure the pain, carrying a money-losing child, and still thinking you're carrying a golden treasure. The father-in-law suddenly let out a scream. Qifa, come quick, Xiaoxiang, he's really not breathing. The mother-in-law rushed over and took a look. Her body went limp, collapsing to the ground. How could this happen? Xiaoxiang was fine at noon. How could? The grandfather seemed to recall something, rushed to the grandmother, grabbed her collar, and gritted his teeth. Lin Suihua, did you buy dead crabs again just to save money? The grandmother's face turned purplish, her tearful eyes drooping, afraid to meet her husband's gaze, shaking her head in denial. And no, that guilty look, even without thinking, one could tell she was lying just by looking at her feet. For the father-in-law, furious, raised his fist and started pounding the mother-in-law. Lin Suihua, how many times have I told you not to buy dead crabs or shrimp? They can cause poisoning. You wouldn't listen. Now, because you wanted to save a little money, you've eaten dead Xiaoxiang. Are you satisfied now? The mother-in-law cried with an innocent expression. Husband, I didn't mean to. We've eaten dead crabs so many times before, and at most we just got stomach aches. I really didn't know eating them would kill Xiaoxiang. She wiped away a tear, glaring at me like a vicious wolf, as if she wanted to devour me. Summer moon, you little bitch, you clearly saw me coming back with dead crabs. Why didn't you try to persuade me? Advise her. How dare I? It's not like I'm seeking death. My father-in-law stared at me with bloodshot eyes, filled with bitter hatred. You little bitch, are you doing this on purpose? That menacing look. If only I had nodded. I'm afraid the next second his fist will land on me. I dare not underestimate my father-in-law. Don't be fooled by my mother-in-law's constant loud outbursts. But the real ruthless one is this quiet father-in-law who rarely speaks. In my previous life, Hanxiang killed me. It was my father-in-law who used a chainsaw to dismember my body, then flushed the pieces down the sewer. Not a single trace of the crime was left behind. If my father-in-law knew I had done it on purpose, he really will kill me. I must not let him suspect anything. My heart was filled with panic, but my face was full of sorrow. Tears streamed down like rain. Dad, I'm about to give birth. How could I possibly deliberately not stop? Mom, do you think I want my child to be born without a father? Becoming a single-parent baby, you know that my parents passed away early. I want nothing more than a complete family. How could I deliberately destroy my own complete family? At this point, choked up, I asked in confusion, Dad, has our family really become so poor that we can't even afford a few live crabs, and we need to buy dead ones to save money? The blame, diverted by my mother-in-law, once again fell upon her. My father-in-law seemed to believe my words, and his large fist swung again. Lin Suihua, do we really need this little bit of money? Do we really need this little bit of money? My mother-in-law's wailing reached my ears, more refreshing than eating a popsicle on a scorching summer day. What a pity. If I had a handful of sunflower seeds, I could be just like my former mother-in-law. While munching on sunflower seeds, I watched the domestic violence unfold live, hearing my father-in-law repeatedly questioning my mother-in-law. I feigned tears, shedding 2 crocodile tears. Dad, Hanxiang is already like this. Please don't blame Mom. I think Mom has no choice. After all, the uncle's family plans to find another wife for my cousin this year, so it's only right for Mom to save some money to help out the uncle. The mother-in-law's nephew is an abusive husband. The previous wife is said to have jumped into the river and died after being beaten beyond endurance. Now the mother-in-law's brother is asking around, trying to find someone to marry his son. The father-in-law, who had already decided to stop, resumed his actions upon hearing this. Lin Suihua, you devil sister-in-law, you've been betraying me all my life, and now you're even killing my son. I'll beat you to death. The father-in-law's eyes were bloodshot, raging like a madman, punching and kicking his wife. Each blow was harder than the last. The mother-in-law screamed in pain, begging her husband to spare her, begging me to plead for her with her father-in-law. I covered my face, appearing to my in-laws as if utterly heartbroken, but they didn't know I was afraid that if I didn't cover my face, my smile would slip out from the corners of my mouth. Hearing my mother-in-law ask me to plead for her, my voice was low, choked with sorrow, beating his pain, scolding his love. Mom, when Dad hits you, it's because he cares about you. Otherwise, why would he hit anyone else? In my previous life, when Han Xiang hit me, my mother-in-law said exactly the same thing. Now I return her words to her, quite literally. A case of words coming full circle. The mother-in-law's screams lasted for over an hour. It wasn't until the father-in-law was too exhausted to continue that he finally stopped. In the bedroom, besides the smell of blood, there was also the stench of feces and urine. Needless to say, the in-laws had defecated again. He's been pulled, he's been beaten. Han Xiang's funeral still needs to be arranged. Regarding the arrangements for Han Xiang's funeral, my in-laws have once again refreshed my understanding. The stingy god truly lives up to his name. Even a dead son can become their money-making. Tool 5. The in-laws carried Han Xiang's body to the crab stall to cause a scene, demanding the boss to compensate 500 to 000. The grandmother threw a tantrum at the stall, shouting that the vendor was selling dead crabs and that they would kill people. Then, pointing at me with my big belly, she tearfully lamented how pitiful the child in my womb was. The father-in-law covered his face and wept, lamenting the sorrow of a white-haired parent burying a black-haired child. His pitiful and heart-wrenching appearance instantly evoked sympathy from the crowd. The in-laws, realizing public opinion was on their side, grew even more unruly. The crab stall owner was a middle-aged man. Naturally, his business skills were sharp, and he wasn't without reason either. The owner, with a grim expression, exposed the grandmother's lie. Aunt Lin, I understand how upset you are about your son's death, but his death has nothing to do with me at all. Those dead crabs were what you said you wanted to take home to use as fertilizer for your flowers, so I gave them to you, and I didn't charge you a single cent, thinking we're neighbors from the same village. When I gave them to you, I warned you repeatedly not to eat the dead crabs. You promised me at the time that you would listen carefully. Now you didn't follow the advice yourself, and when something went wrong, you're coming to blame me. The mother-in-law refused to admit it, shaking her head like a rattle. That's not true. You sold it to me. The boss, with a cold expression, it doesn't matter if you don't admit it. I have cameras here. Just check the footage and everything will be clear. Hearing those words, the mother-in-law immediately lost her temper. The father-in-law, furious, slapped the mother-in-law hard across the face. You wretched fool, why isn't it you who dies? The mother-in-law clutched her face and began wailing and rolling on the ground in a fit of tantrum. The father-in-law chased after her, hitting her. For a moment, chaos erupted. The crab stall owner couldn't conduct business at all. The crab stall owner realized that this elderly couple wouldn't leave until they got money, so he gritted his teeth and expressed willingness to pay some moral compensation. Hearing this, grandfather stopped hitting, the mother-in-law stopped crying. The two people looked greedily at the boss, asking how much spiritual compensation he would give. The crab stall owner cut with a sound, quoting 20,000. The in-laws thought it was too little and bargained with the boss. Finally, they agreed on 30,000. The crab stall owner was shrewd and made the two sign a written agreement. He would not be responsible for Han Xiang's death. If any further issues arose due to the dead crabs, he would have no involvement. The in-laws, having gotten 3,000 yuan for nothing, happily carried Han Xiang home. That joyful expression, if it weren't for Han Xiang's body still lying there, I would have thought there was some great joy at home. I wonder what the filial son Han Xiang would feel if he saw his dear parents' faces like this. You must be very happy. After all, he has always been a filial and obedient son-in-law. Used his death to earn 30,000 yuan for his parents. It was his final act of filial piety. I thought my in-laws' actions had already reached the peak of stinginess, but I didn't realize I still didn't understand them well enough. When I got home, they finally remembered that their son had died and that a funeral needed to be held. As far as I know, funerals here usually last 3 to 5 days. The in-laws said that Han Xiang had passed away at a young age. It's too hard on them. Keep it simple. I certainly have no objection. Don't say a simple ceremony. I'd rather have no ceremony at all. It seemed as if heaven had heard my thoughts. A simple ceremony for my in-laws is the same as having no ceremony at all. The next day, they called a hearse to take Han Xiang to the funeral home for cremation. It took less than 4 hours from start to finish. Han Xiang went from being a tall man of 185 meters to a small box. My in-laws were very sad. I felt, not sad, the sorrow so deep it nearly made her eyes cry. Blind didn't stop her in-laws from eating on time. It was time for lunch. The bruised and tear-streaked mother-in-law wiped her tears and went back into the kitchen. I was deeply shocked by the impact of my mother-in-law's suffering, so I made an excuse to go into the kitchen. Then I almost couldn't hold back my laughter, peeling greenish potatoes, scraping the surface of moldy rice cakes, Blackened bamboo shoots soaked in boiling water, also prepared a few dead crabs, chopped into small pieces, so the mother-in-law thinks one death in the family isn't enough, she wants more. Is she making food? It's a gas bomb. 6. My mother-in-law, seeing me staring at the crab that had been cut into pieces, frowned coldly. Yesterday at noon, the crab was steamed, probably without spicy oil to remove the fishy smell. I'll make a spicy crab dish. Once the smell is gone, it'll be fine. She glanced at my belly. Xiaoxiang is gone now, though the child in your belly is a loss. He is Xiaoxiang's only heir. I will take care of you. When the spicy crab is ready, you should also try a couple of pieces of the side dishes. I almost got scared to the point of my legs giving way. Quickly shaking my head, I politely declined. Mom, thank you for your concern, but crab is too cold in nature and not good for the baby. Now this child is Han Xiang's only bloodline. I must protect her. I'll just have some vegetable noodles instead. Seeing that I didn't accept the olive branch she offered, my mother-in-law's expression grew even colder, and she snorted, "You're a spineless wretch. Fine, don't eat then." At dinner time, my mother-in-law brought the spicy crab to the table. Grandpa slammed the table in anger. "Even dead crabs have eaten Xiaoxiang alive, and you still dare to cook and eat them." Grandma quickly spoke up to explain, "It's not the crab's fault. It must be that I didn't steam the crab thoroughly yesterday. Think about it, how many times have we both eaten spicy dead crabs, and when has anything ever gone wrong? That's a great reason." The father-in-law thought for a moment, then sat down and picked up his chopsticks. He must have accepted the mother-in-law's explanation. The mother-in-law also sat down with her husband and started eating. The two of them were eating with great enjoyment. I was eating my green vegetable noodles, but it tasted bland and uninteresting. My mother-in-law, resentful that I had just embarrassed her, deliberately provoked me. "Honey, eat more. Don't waste it. Some people are ungrateful, so they are destined to miss out on good fortune." The father-in-law obediently ate more. Most of the spicy crab in the pot went straight into his stomach. When he got up after eating, his body swayed, and he frothed at the mouth. The whole person collapsed. The mother-in-law was greatly alarmed and hurriedly tried to pull the father-in-law up. Husband, I also pretended to look anxious. "Mom, I'm calling 120 right now, even if it costs a few hundred yuan." It's fast. Hearing that it would cost a few hundred yuan, the mother-in-law's eyes widened. "You wasteful woman, is a few hundred yuan not money? Why call 120? Your dad has eaten spicy dead crabs with me many times and nothing happened. This time will be fine too. It'll probably hurt for a while, but it'll be fine." But my father-in-law clutched his stomach, sweat beating heavily as he groaned. "Xiaoyu, don't listen to your mother-in law. Quickly, call 120. I looked troubled. "So, whose word should I listen to?" My in-laws unanimously said to listen to me. Since everyone wants me to listen, then I can only listen to no one. I rummaged through the house and found some medicine for stomach pain. As expected, it had been expired for a long time. I poured a cup of hot water and handed the expired medicine to my father-in-law. "Dad, take some medicine first. If it doesn't work, I'll call 120. My mother-in-law thought it was a good idea. I quickly took it over, stuffed the medicine into my father-in-law's mouth, and forced him to swallow it. I lowered my eyelids, feeling extremely delighted inside. It was reinforced with expired medication. If father-in-law doesn't want to die, even the king of hell wouldn't agree. Right? Father-in-law, having taken the medicine, foamed at the mouth even more violently, writhing in pain on the ground, wailing miserably. That unbearable agony looked exactly like me before my death in my previous life. Father-in-law begged me to call 120 immediately. I put on the timid, fearful look of a daughter-in-law afraid of her mother-in-law and shook my head. "Dad, you said a daughter-in-law must respect her mother-in-law. Without her permission, I wouldn't dare. Isn't it necessary for me to listen to my mother-in-law?" "I'll listen. No, I'm more obedient to my mother-in-law than anyone else. I just wonder if my father-in-law regrets forcing me to be a filial daughter-in-law who listens to my mother-in-law." 7. With a heart full of hatred for my mother-in-law, my father-in-law closed his eyes. My mother-in-law was so frightened that she fell to the ground with a thud, her face pale as a sheet. She threw herself onto my father-in-law, wailing, "Husband, don't scare me, don't scare me." I also rushed forward, reaching out to shake my father-in-law. "Dad, wake up quickly. Han Xiang just passed away. You can't have anything happen. People are dying one after another. If the police suspect we intentionally killed someone, then my mother-in-law and I will definitely go to jail." My mother-in-law's crying suddenly stopped, her expression changing repeatedly, as if she had thought of something. I subtly brushed my hand past my father-in-law's nostrils to check his breathing. Great, more air goes in, none comes out. There's no hope. Suppressing the surging joy within, I stood up with a look of utter grief on my face, biting my lip. I said to my mother-in-law, "Mom, Dad really can't wait any longer, even if you don't let me call 120. I have to do it. I took out my phone and had just dialed the first digit when my mother-in-law reached out to snatch it. Don't call. I pretended to be defeated, and my phone fell to the ground. It instantly went black. No, even if I wanted to make a call, I couldn't. Mom, Dad is in this state now. Can we please stop worrying about money at a time like this? Did you break my phone on purpose to stop me from calling 120 to save Dad? I screamed at the top of my lungs. I was even impressed by my own superb acting skills. Good thing I didn't pursue a career in showbiz, or else who else could be the best actress but me? The father-in-law seemed to be spurred by these words into summoning his last burst of energy. He raised both hands and fiercely grabbed the mother-in-law by the neck. You worthless wretch, murdering your own husband, you old hag. The mother-in-law was soon choked to the point of gasping for breath. She struggled desperately. She clawed and bit at her father-in-law, who was at the end of his rope. Watching the two of them fight like dogs, I felt so excited I wanted to set off firecrackers. Just when I thought these two old dogs were going to destroy each other, a burly figure rushed over. He kicked his father-in-law. You old bastard, how dare you bully my aunt? I'll kick you to death. It was Lin Hai, the nephew of his mother-in-law. The father-in-law was kicked flying out, landing on the ground and immediately falling silent. The mother-in-law clutched her bruised neck, gasping for breath as she tearfully thanked Lin Hai. Hi Z, thank you. It's a good thing you came, otherwise your aunt would have been strangled to death by that old beast. Lin Hai patted his chest, exuding a manly demeanor. Auntie, don't worry, as long as I'm here, no one can bully you. My mother-in-law was moved to tears by these words. She didn't even notice when my father-in-law on the ground had breathed his last, suppressing my laughter. I pretended to be sad and reminded my mother-in-law, Mom, stop crying for now. Dad seems to have stopped breathing. The mother-in-law's face changed color as she bent down and crouched beside the father-in-law. She reached out a finger to check under his nose. Startled, she fell back onto the ground, scrambling backward in a panic. Really, no breath left. Lin Hai was so frightened that his legs went weak, and he collapsed to the ground, crying out, I just kicked him once, didn't I? I didn't even use all my strength. How could he have no breath left? I stood to the side with my head lowered, not the slightest bit inclined to clear up his confusion. Lin Hai is no ordinary bad guy, and not only is he a domestic abuser, but he's also a lecher. On the day I married Han Xiang, he pretended to be drunk. Then, under the guise of celebrating the wedding night, he entered the bridal chamber. He wanted to force himself on me. Han Xiang happened to catch him in the act and drove him out, so he didn't succeed. When my mother-in-law found out, she didn't feel sorry for me for almost being assaulted. She only felt sorry for her nephew being beaten. She even blamed me for wearing a wedding dress at the wedding, saying I looked like a seductress, and didn't blame her nephew for having such thoughts, calling me a scourge. On the very first day I entered the house, I caused Han Xiang and Lin Hai to turn against each other. Now, I am rather curious, between herself and her dear nephew, who will she choose to bear the blame for causing my father-in-law's death? 8. In the adult world, there is no room for choices. Neither mother-in-law nor Lin Hai took on the blame for causing father-in-law's death. They shifted the blame onto me. My mother-in-law said, if anyone asks who made that plate of spicy crab, let me answer that I made it. I was completely stunned. I was dumbfounded and didn't know how to respond. My mother-in-law thought I was unwilling to admit it, pointing at Lin Hai. Her tone turned sinister. If you don't agree, I'll have Haizi stuff the dead crab from the basin into your mouth. To have already died from poisoning. What's one more? I had died once before, and I had witnessed the cold-heartedness of my mother-in-law's family. I didn't dare to gamble even a little on whether what she said was true or false. I nodded hurriedly, agreeing without the slightest hesitation. Mom, don't worry. If anyone asks, I'll say I was craving spicy crab because I'm pregnant, so I made a plate for myself. Who knew my father-in-law would eat it? Even though I agreed, my mother-in-law still wasn't reassured and locked me in the room. Not long after, I heard an elderly man's voice outside. I stood by the door, pricking up my ears to listen carefully. It took a long time before I recognized it as the voice of Lin Hai's father. It seemed he was the reinforcement that mother-in-law and Lin Hai had called to discuss father-in-law's funeral arrangements later. I couldn't make out what secret the three of them were discussing, as they lowered their voices. No matter how hard I try, I just can't hear clearly. It was only a moment later that the TV at home turned on, with the volume cranked up loud. I wonder what kind of trouble my mother-in-law and the others are going to stir up again. A short while later, I faintly heard the sound of a chainsaw amidst the noisy TV noise. My heart skipped a beat. No way, could it be that I didn't dare to think further. I shook my head and pushed that thought away. Perhaps there have been too many things happening these past 2 days, and I am too exhausted. Sitting by the bed, I leaned against the headboard and fell asleep. It was the sound of a key turning in the lock that startled me awake. When I opened my eyes, I found the world outside the window pitch black. The mother-in-law led Lin Hai and his son inside. The faces of the three were cast in a half-light, as if half human and half ghost. The mother-in-law told me that with 2 people dead in the house in 2 days, it wouldn't look good if word got out, so he asked Lin Hai and his son to quietly bury the father-in-law. If anyone asks, just let me say that the father-in-law was upset with the mother-in-law over Han Xiang's death and went out to relax. After hearing this, I nodded to my mother-in-law. Mom, you really think things through. I'll listen to you. Hearing my words, my mother-in-law relaxed completely. The tense bodies of Lin Hai and his son also loosened considerably. My mother-in-law cleared her throat softly and continued, Xiaoyu, you are a sensible and good child. There's one more thing I'd like to discuss with you. My heart tightened, guessing what my mother-in-law was about to say next. For me, it was definitely not good news, but under the watchful eyes of the 3 of them, I nodded obediently. Mom, it's just you and me in the family now. You're the elder, so if there's anything you need, just tell me. How could I possibly refuse? Mother-in-law nodded with satisfaction, feeling that I should have this attitude, and confidently instructed. I've thought it over. With Han Xiang and your father both gone, it's not easy for us 2 women to hold up the household, so I've decided to have you marry Lin Hai. No way, really, although I guessed it wouldn't be anything good, but I truly didn't expect it to be this bad. Marry Lin Hai? I'd rather be killed outright. I looked utterly shocked and unable to accept the situation. Mom, Han Xiang's ashes are still in the living room. How could you? 9. My mother-in-law's face flashed with a hint of discomfort, probably feeling that doing so would be too unfair to their son who had just passed away. Yet they refused to relent, stubbornly pressuring me. I'm doing this for your and the child's sake. Lin Hai has already promised me that once the child is born, he will treat them as his own. Even if Xiaoxiang's spirit is watching from above, he would only be happy that his child won't grow up without a father. He wouldn't blame us. Lin Hai then expressed his stance following his mother's words. Xiaoyu, rest assured, as long as you agree to marry me, I promise to treat you and the child well in the future. Even if we have our own children in the future, I will treat you and your cousin's child as my own, and I will never treat them differently. Lin Hai's father also advised me. Xiaoyu, I know it's hard for you to accept this right now, but think about it. Xiaoxiang is gone, your father-in-law is gone, and your mother-in-law is getting old. In the future, you'll have to support this family all by yourself. You'll have to take care of the child, earn money, and support your mother-in-law. Even if you were made of iron, you wouldn't be able to handle it all. Your cousin may not have any great talents, but he's strong and capable of supporting a family. I know you can't bear to let go of Xiaoxiang, so when the child in your belly is born, they can take the Han surname. In the future, we can arrange for a son-in-law to carry on the Han family line. I almost opened my mouth to ask, does the Han family have a throne to inherit, and they want to pass on the family line? The 3 of them blocked all my escape routes from every angle. I had no choice but to agree. As if somewhat swayed by his words, I looked at Lin Hai. Cousin, will you really let the child in my womb take the Han surname, and will you truly treat her as your own after she is born? Sensing my hesitation, Lin Hai, afraid I might refuse, quickly patted his chest and assured me. Xiaoyu, don't worry, a real man stands by his word. What I, Lin Hai, have said, I will never go back on. I glanced at him, frowning in thought. This matter, I'm feeling quite unsettled. Let me think it over a bit more. Lin Hai opened his mouth, ready to persuade him again, but his father spoke first. Marriage is indeed not a trivial matter. It's right for you to think it over. Lin Hai shot his father a dissatisfied look, but ultimately didn't try to persuade me further. Instead, as if to prove he would be a good husband, he asked me with extra consideration, Xiaoyu, you haven't eaten anything all this time in the room. Let me make something for you to eat. I was just about to go out and see what was going on. Upon hearing this, I didn't refuse. How could I trouble my cousin? How about I go with you to take care of it? Lin Hai was eager to build a connection with me and immediately agreed, even reaching out to help me out the door. I suppressed my disgust and let him help me into the kitchen. A faint smell of disinfectant lingered at the tip of my nose. I discreetly observed the kitchen at a glance. My admiration for my mother-in-law surged like the endless flow of the Yellow River. There were actually crabs in the pot, but this time, they weren't steamed crabs, nor were they spicy crabs. They were garlic crabs. The strong garlic paste flavor completely masked the odor of the dead crab, making it smell particularly rich and fragrant. Seeing me staring at the garlic crab, my mother-in-law worried that I might snatch it away. There are only 6 crabs left, prepared for your uncle and Haizi. Don't even think about Eating them, Lin Hai immediately spoke up. If Xiaoyu wants to eat, I'll let her have mine. I wouldn't dare to eat it, shaking my head. Cousin, you can have it yourself. I prefer vegetable noodles. Lin Hai wasn't genuinely trying to offer it to me either. Seeing me say this, he didn't speak up again. Lin Hai and his son ate garlic crab and drank the white liquor left by his father-in-law, and I still ate green vegetable noodles. With lowered eyelids, I patiently waited for the bell of death to ring again. 10. After finishing the crab and the small drink, both Lin Hai and his son fell to the ground, clutching their stomachs and wailing. This time, the mother-in-law actively called 120. Lin Hai and his son were taken to the hospital for emergency treatment. Unfortunately, none of them could be saved. When I heard this news, the corner of my lips curled up slightly. It's just as well that these two beasts are dead. No more innocent women will be mistreated by these two beasts. The South Korean military only told me that Lin Hai's wife committed suicide because she couldn't endure domestic violence, but I knew, besides domestic violence, it was also because Lin Hai and his father shared the same wife. To say I married Lin Hai is actually to say I married both Lin Hai and his father. Because of this, no one has been willing to marry Lin Hai all these years. It is only because they are both beasts that they would set their sights on me. My mother-in-law knew full well what kind of men Lin Hai and his father were, yet she still forced me to marry. How could I let down a mother-in-law who has been so good to me? But simply causing her family to be ruined and her loved ones to perish would hardly reflect the depth of my affection for her. The real show is yet to come. The doctor detected a large amount of corrosive liquid in the stomachs of Lin Hai and his son. The hospital reported the incident to the police. My mother-in-law and I were taken to the police station as suspects under police questioning. My mother-in-law revealed the truth. It turned out that she believed dead crabs were poisonous and that 84 disinfectant was for sterilization, so she soaked the dead crab in 84 disinfectant, hoping to neutralize its toxicity. The police officer taking the statement was left speechless and exclaimed, "Soaking a dead crab in 84 disinfectant." Seeing the officer's expression, the mother-in-law knew something was wrong. With a flick of her eyes, she pointed at me. "She made me do it. She was the one who ordered it." Still trying to pin the blame on me, I shook my head, tears shimmering in my eyes. "Mom, did I really order you to do it? Do you think the police are all fools? Isn't all this trouble caused by your greed for cheapness and using dead crabs? The first time you steamed dead crabs, and Han Xiang died from eating them. The second time you made spicy dead crabs, and my father-in-law died from eating them. The third time you made garlic-buttered dead crabs, and my uncle and cousin died from eating them. Now you still want to frame me. Aren't you afraid that your father-in-law and the others will come to haunt you in the middle of the night?" The police officer paused while taking notes, his jaw dropping to the floor, unable to pick it up. Probably didn't expect that pulling out one radish would bring up a whole pit. There's so much more going on behind the scenes. My mother-in-law firmly refused to admit it, insisting that she was acting under my instructions. Thus, both my mother-in-law and I were detained. 3 days later, I was acquitted. My mother-in-law was sentenced to life imprisonment. The crab stall owner contributed the most to my mother-in-law's conviction. He provided the video of my mother-in-law buying dead crabs that day. Moreover, the crab stall owner pointed out that the mother-in-law had previously bought dead crabs to use as fertilizer. It was definitely not the first time she had made such a purchase. The police visited the surrounding neighbors. The neighbors also confirmed that the in-laws had a history of eating dead crabs and suffering from diarrhea. My suspicions have been completely cleared. The evidence of the mother-in-law's crime is solid. The police believe that the mother-in-law knew that dead crabs should not be eaten, yet she repeatedly prepared them for others to eat. There is suspicion of murder, and she must be severely punished. Of course, suspecting my mother-in-law of murder should also be credited to my father-in-law's posthumous efforts. It turns out I wasn't mistaken that day. Amidst the noise from the TV, it was indeed the sound of a chainsaw. My father-in-law was dismembered by my mother-in-law and Lin Hai and his son using a chainsaw, then flushed down the drain. Upon hearing about my father-in-law's fate, I feel a bit dazed. Somehow, I thought of 4 words: the wheel of heaven's way. My mother-in-law's family breathless, unable to breathe. Those who can breathe are worse off than the breathless. Everything will eventually go as I wish. What can I do? I could only happily sell the property for my husband's family. With the substantial savings that my in-laws had frugally accumulated over a lifetime, I found a postpartum care center facing the sea, awaiting the birth of my daughter amidst the blooming spring flowers. I gave my daughter a name, Xiaohao. In her previous life, Han Xiang's family didn't care at all whether the child lived or died. I suppose in this life, they wouldn't care about the child taking the Han surname either. 11. Extra chapter. Before leaving, I went to see my mother-in-law. She was in handcuffs and looked much older, muttering to herself. She kept saying, "I didn't mean to. I didn't know. I really didn't know." Unfortunately, those who were willing to believe her were all poisoned by her dead crab toxin. When she saw me, her expression of disappointment turned into resentment. "You little bitch. What are you doing here? It's all your fault." If you hadn't come back to give birth, I wouldn't have killed the crab, and none of this would have happened. It's all your fault and that little bastard in your belly. You're the real culprits. Why isn't it you who died? I wasn't at all angry about my mother-in-law's unrepentant attitude. Smiling brightly, she said, because heaven has eyes. The grandmother was stunned. I lowered my voice and told her that I was reborn. I knew the dead crabs she bought would eat people. I deliberately said nothing. Watching her eat one by one the dead relatives of her own family, the mother-in-law went mad and lunged at me, trying to strangle me. Naturally, she couldn't get close to me. She was just about to go mad when the prison guards, who had arrived upon hearing the news, caught her. My mother-in-law scolded me loudly, then pointed at me and told the guards that I was a reincarnated demon, ordering them to arrest me and burn me to death. She also claimed that I had planned all of this, and that I was the wretched woman who should be imprisoned. Unfortunately, no one believed the mad words spoken by my mother-in-law. The prison guard holding the mother-in-law frowned impatiently, losing patience with the mother-in-law who was screaming like a madwoman, looking at me, who was clutching my stomach with an anxious expression, worried that the mad mother-in-law staying here any longer might harm me, who was pregnant. He dragged her away and locked her back in prison. I believe that from this day forward, my mother-in-law will spend each day in intense hatred. I don't know what it's like to be filled with hatred yet unable to take revenge. What kind of torment will each day bring? But I believe my mother-in-law is strong enough. It would sustain her through every day that felt unbearable. Smiling and thanking her, I stumbled away. I knew this was the last time I would see my mother-in-law. From now on, I would live my life freely through the years, and she will spend the rest of her life suffering in prison. This is the best arrangement. Stepping out of the prison gates, the sun is bright. It's a perfect sunny day. I bathe in the sunlight, step by step, step out of the past, step out of the previous life, also heading towards their own sunny days. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My roommate is bound to a Cinderella system, receiving luxury clothes, expensive jewelry, and chauffeur-driven luxury cars every night. So, by crafting a wealthy and glamorous persona, she formed cliques at school to isolate me and stole my boyfriend. But at the stroke of midnight, whether it's the clothes, jewelry, or luxury cars, they all vanish without a trace, and I am the true owner of all these things. My roommate Lucy has suddenly become the center of attention lately. On Friday, we all went to a newly opened barbecue place nearby for a late-night snack. Since it wasn't far, I suggested we walk there. Lucy said calmly, "Let's just drive." I was puzzled. "It's less than a kilometer away, let's just walk." Lucy didn't look at me directly, but stretched out her legs. On her feet, a pair of YSL crystal strap high heels shone dazzlingly. "I'm wearing high heels and don't want to walk." Beside her, another roommate Winnie immediately exclaimed, "Wow, Lucy, aren't these shoes over 10,000 yuan? Why are you suddenly wearing such expensive shoes?" Lucy smiled faintly. "When we first met, I thought it wasn't good to show off wealth, so I kept using affordable things, but now that we're familiar anyway, I think it's more comfortable to return to my previous lifestyle." The roommates opened their mouths wide and started discussing animatedly. "So you're actually a hidden rich and beautiful girl. You were way too low-key before. You really know how to keep things hidden. These shoes are so beautiful. I wish I could buy a pair someday." I stood aside, looking troubled, and did not join in the agreement. I don't know if Lucy is a rich, beautiful, and fair-skinned girl. I only know that I have the same pair of shoes, and they are exactly like Lucy's. I know very well that while they are beautiful, they are incredibly uncomfortable. My mom gave them to me, and I only wore them once at my high school graduation ceremony. It was so painful that I wore a pained expression the entire time. After that, I put it away on a high shelf and never wore it again. Actually, the reason I looked troubled was simply because I couldn't bring myself to praise such a beautiful instrument of torture. But in Lucy's eyes, it came across as jealousy, especially since I said, "For a barbecue that costs 50 per person, there's no need to wear such expensive shoes." Lucy immediately confronted me. "Ella, who are you to tell me what to do? Those cheap shoes are uncomfortable for me. I can only wear this pair." Winnie, who is closest to Lucy, immediately chimed in, "Exactly. You just don't understand the world of the rich and beautiful." I pursed my lips and stayed silent. To be honest, my family is fairly well off too. My dad is the CEO of a medical equipment group, and my mom is the second-generation heiress of a manufacturing empire. Their marriage was once described as a real-life version of a wealthy alliance story, but a tall tree catches the wind. When I was a child, I was kidnapped once because I showed off my wealth, which left my parents with severe psychological trauma. As a result, they not only forbade me from telling others that I was their child, but even changed the name on my ID card, all in an effort to keep a low profile. When I didn't have a bodyguard with me, I wasn't even allowed to carry a bag that cost more than 300 yuan, so I carried my textbooks in an eco-friendly bag every day and wore white t-shirts that cost 30 yuan with free shipping from online, and I actually lived quite happily. It's in moments like these, when you're being flaunted with wealth right in your face and can't retaliate, that you still feel a bit annoyed as I was. I still went up for a late-night snack with my roommates. After all, I was genuinely hungry and didn't want to miss out on lamb skewers, grilled chicken hearts, and toast slices slathered with condensed milk. As soon as we stepped out of the building, a Maybach was parked downstairs. At this point, I finally feel something is wrong, because this Maybach is also from my family. The license plate number is exactly the same. I could still dismiss the high heels earlier as us buying the same style. This license plate can't be the same model, can it? But at this moment, Lucy clearly appeared to be the owner of this car. Amid the exclamations of the other roommates, she got into the driver's seat and gracefully offered to drive us to the barbecue restaurant. My first reaction was that my family's car had been stolen, but then I thought, who would drive a stolen car out to show off? That would be downright idiotic. So I silently got in the car, planning to wait and see how things unfolded. Since I just put on makeup, take a few photos of me, Lucy said. Winnie immediately started taking pictures of Lucy. Lucy sat in the driver's seat, striking various poses while directing Winnie, hold the camera a bit higher, I want my new shoes in the shot. After all that fiddling around, I suddenly spoke up from the back seat, Lucy, is this car yours? Lucy immediately got upset. Ella, what do you mean by that? Are the shoes yours too? Otherwise, could it be yours? Lucy glanced at my $30 white t-shirt and sneered. Ella, it's okay to be poor, but don't be so bitter. I'm not bitter, I just have a question. I pointed downward. Why did you buy shoes that are a size too small? With my reminder, the other roommates all turned to look at Lucy's shoes. Sure enough, the shoes were a size too small. Not only were red marks left on Lucy's feet from the straps, but her toes also protruded noticeably from the front, making it look rather awkward. Lucy's face turned red, but she quickly composed herself. The store didn't have a full range of sizes. I liked these shoes so much that I bought a size smaller. What's the problem? The other roommates tried to calm her down. Lucy, don't be upset. Ella has never been to a luxury store before. Why are you getting so worked up over her? Lucy coldly opened the car door. If you don't want to ride, you can get out and walk. I won't. This is my car. Why should I get out? At the moment, I have two options. I either call the police directly and have Lucy arrested, but this would cause a big scene, and all the effort my parents put into keeping a low profile and hiding my identity would be in vain. The second option is to see what Lucy is really up to. I chose the second option, so I quietly followed them to the barbecue restaurant. That night, everyone ate a bit late, and before we knew it, it was almost midnight. Lucy went to the restroom, and when she came back, she had changed into a pair of plastic sandals. I quietly glanced out the window. I noticed that the Maybach was gone. Lucy explained that her family's driver had just been there and taken the car away, but I clearly didn't see any driver. My intuition told me that something wasn't quite right about this. The next day, Lucy posted 9 photos on her social media feed, all of her striking various poses in the driver's seat of a Maybach. The story of her driving a Maybach to take her roommate out for barbecue spread throughout the school, and everyone knew there was a low-key, wealthy, and beautiful girl in our dorm, including my boyfriend, Harry. While eating spicy hot pot together, Harry nudged me and asked, "What's the background of Lucy in your dorm?" I was panting from the spiciness of the hot pot and hastily replied, "Not familiar." Harry glanced at my furrowed brow and said coolly, "I was just asking a question. You don't have to be like this." I immediately got annoyed. What am I doing? Harry gave me a look that said, "See, you're being unreasonable again," and waved his hand dismissively as if to drop the subject. He lowered his head and started eating the spicy hot pot, looking as if he had a lot on his mind. I am also filled with thoughts. My intuition tells me that Lucy is going to cause trouble again tonight. Sure enough, Lucy invited Winnie to go shopping that evening and even handed her a camera, asking her to take more flattering photos of herself. She was dressed in a Chanel suit, carrying an Hermes bag, and wearing a fully diamond-studded Cartier bracelet on her wrist. As I expected, the dress is mine, the bag is mine, and the bracelet is mine too. Even the camera that was given to Winnie is mine. As soon as they left, I called my housekeeper and checked the surveillance footage. Strange, no one had entered the fitting room where I left my dress and bag. The private garage where the Maybach is parked has never been entered by anyone. It's as if there's some supernatural power. Once night falls, these things are transferred to Lucy, and after midnight, they return to my home. It reminds one of Cinderella's glass slipper and pumpkin carriage. Wait, Cinderella. When I can't sleep, I like to flip through a few pages of a fairy tale book. Lately, the one I've been reading is Cinderella. I picked up the fairy tale book that was lying face down on the table. Something strange happened. A mechanical electronic voice suddenly rang in my ears. "Hello. Host, congratulations on binding the complete collection of fairy tales system. Its branch systems will be randomly assigned to the people around you. So I'm the host. I immediately tried to communicate with the system telepathically. My roommate Lucy, does she have something to do with Cinderella? That's right, Lucy is bound to the Cinderella system. Every night at 7, she can obtain any item she wants, except for cash, and these items will return to their original owners at midnight, so cash is excluded. No wonder Lucy never pays the bill when she goes out for barbecue with us. The next second, a wave of sorrow washed over me when others bind to a system, they gain a golden finger and rise to the peak of life. When I bind to a system, my things get misappropriated by others. What kind of unlucky soul am I? Can I stop her from using the system? I asked. Of course, since you are the host, as long as you tear out the corresponding fairy tale, the associated system abilities will be invalidated. In other words, as long as I tear out the pages about Cinderella from the fairy tale book, Lucy will no longer be able to use my things to show off her wealth. But I hesitated for a moment. It wasn't for any other reason, but because a few minutes ago, I noticed that Lucy's social media post had received an extra like. When I clicked in, I discovered that the social media account that had liked the post actually belonged to my boyfriend, Harry. There was a very blurry selfie of him on the profile page. He had never used social media before. The hand that was about to tear the fairy tale book stopped right there. To be honest, Harry's behavior over the past couple of days has been really unusual. We started dating right after graduating from high school. He didn't know about my family background, but he thought I was pretty and had good grades, so he had been enthusiastically pursuing me since our first year of high school. After we entered university, we attended different schools in the same city, and he still made an effort to come see me every weekend. My parents never liked Harry. Every time I went home, they would ask me, "Have you broken up with your freeloader boyfriend yet?" In the first couple of years, I would seriously reply, "Harry is not a freeloader. He said he would treat me well once he becomes rich in the future." Lately, I've been increasingly feeling that Harry really wants to get rich, but his approach is just not right, and what happened later only further confirmed my hunch. On Sunday evening, Lucy came back beaming with joy. She said she was no longer single and that her boyfriend was a perfect match for her. That evening, she also posted an official announcement photo, which showed two tightly clasped hands, with the man's hand wearing a conspicuous Richard Miller watch. The roommates were in an uproar again. "Isn't that watch really expensive?" Winnie asked enviously. Lucy smiled proudly. "Of course, there are only 3 in the world. One was bought by a Hollywood star, one is in the collection of a Dubai prince, and this is the only one in the country." I stood aside, my face ashen. Of course, I knew there was only one like this in the country. Rushing out of the dormitory, I immediately called my younger brother. "Are you in a relationship?" My 12-year-old brother was shocked. "How did you find out?" I was furious. "Confess and you'll be treated leniently." My brother was feeling emotional late at night. "I've liked my deskmate for a long time, but I don't dare to confess. She's both beautiful and outstanding, while I have nothing." I was speechless. If nothing else, I can at least be sure that Lucy is not my brother's deskmate. Yes, that watch from back home was a gift from my dad to my brother for his zodiac year. However, my brother, like me, is currently studying incognito at a boarding school. That watch is kept in the safe in his bedroom, and if it went missing, he wouldn't notice right away. Could it be that Lucy used the Cinderella system to steal the watch? But that doesn't make sense either. I've only heard of Cinderella embellishing herself, but never heard of her asking the fairy godmother for things for the prince. Suddenly, my phone rang again. It was Harry. "Ella, I'm making this call for one purpose only. We're breaking up. I did love you, and I know you loved me too, but a relationship without material foundation is like a handful of sand. 2 people with different spending habits can't be together." I laughed in disbelief. "How are our spending habits different?" Harry remained silent for a moment. "I've been accommodating you all this time. Actually, my father is the chairman of a major corporation," Harry said. "So Ella, we are destined to be from different social classes. I wish you happiness. I have prepared 200 insults as a result." Harry slammed the phone down with a bang. "I really am. If Harry's father is the chairman of the group, then my father is the richest man in J-City. Oh, my dad is actually the richest man in J-City. Seriously, I've lived a low-key life for so long that I almost forgot about it myself." But anyway, Harry definitely couldn't be some rich second generation. When we were dating, he even made me pay for his spicy hot pot. A strange intuition washed over me. I picked up my phone, opened Lucy's official announcement photo, and zoomed in to examine it over and over. This guy's hand, it really does look like Harry's. In that instant, everything suddenly clicked for me. Lucy was flaunting her wealth like that because she was definitely trying to snag a rich husband, and Harry, thinking Lucy was a genuine wealthy socialite, immediately started presenting himself in a certain way, hoping to win her over. Lucy saw that Harry had such an expensive watch and must have been convinced of his identity as a rich second-generation heir, but she never expected that Harry was also someone close to me. According to the system's words, everyone around me has been randomly assigned a fairy tale, so, just like Lucy, Harry is also bound to the system. I immediately opened the fairy tale book and started searching through it. Suddenly, I laughed. I knew what system Harry was bound to. The next page after Cinderella was Aladdin and the magic lamp. Lucy can disguise herself as a princess with glass slippers and a pumpkin carriage, but at midnight, her true form will be revealed, and everything borrowed must be returned. As for Harry, he can make a wish to the magic lamp to disguise himself as a prince. But the Aladdin's lamp only grants 3 wishes in total, if I remember correctly. Lucy just mentioned that her boyfriend is hosting a grand candlelit dinner for his birthday and has invited everyone to join. Clearly, this is Harry's attempt to showcase his wealth and accelerate his relationship with Lucy, so that Richard Miller watch was his first wish, and the candlelit dinner was his second wish. He only has one chance left. Actually, I could just tear up this fairy tale book right now, and these two would have no way to continue, but I don't want to. Let's not even talk about Harry. He's a total scumbag. Lucy has been targeting me since the first day of school. After I outperformed her in both academics and student activities, she not only teamed up with the other roommates to isolate me but also kept spreading rumors about me to people from other departments. Now, Harry is even willing to break up with me, his long-term girlfriend, and spare no expense just to win the heart of a rich and beautiful woman. Lucy wears ill-fitting high heels every day to go on dates. Like a little mermaid walking on the tips of knives, both of them are working so hard just to marry into a wealthy family. How can I make someone cut their losses in time? So I carefully put away the fairy tale book, bought plenty of popcorn and sunflower seeds, and prepared to enjoy the show peacefully. Lucy did not disappoint my expectations. Every time she came back from a date, she would broadcast her love life like a little trumpet. Today, my boyfriend took me to the newly opened bistro for dinner. It was super romantic. I rolled over in bed and said lazily, "They dare to price a 5 yuan portion of popcorn chicken from the cafeteria at 228 yuan just by adding 2 flowers on top. That's quite the vibe." Lucy's voice immediately sharpened. What we're paying for is the vibe, the service, the atmosphere. These are the things that add value to the dish. Her die-hard fan Winnie immediately defended her. "Look at you, why bother arguing with Ella? With Ella's taste, she's only fit to eat cafeteria popcorn chicken." Seriously, what did the cafeteria popcorn chicken ever do to them? Crispy and crunchy on the outside, tender and juicy on the inside, generously sprinkled with pepper, salt and chili powder. One bite and it's pure bliss. Not to mention, the auntie in charge of serving food always says I'm too thin and need to eat more, and she even gives me 2 extra sweet taro balls. After refuting me, Winnie immediately grabbed Lucy's sleeve and shook it, saying, "Lucy, how did you find such a great boyfriend? Teach me too. I'm still single." No one willingly becomes someone else's lackey unless she can also gain something from it. Winnie is such a fence-sitter. When I was the student council president, she flattered me everywhere. Now that Lucy's identity as a top-tier rich and beautiful girl has been exposed, she immediately became the little princess's most loyal follower. Clearly, Winnie hopes to find a wealthy boyfriend just like Lucy, but Lucy just gave Winnie a cold, scrutinizing look up and down before finally saying coolly, "Vivi, don't blame me for being blunt, but we're no longer at the age where love alone can satisfy hunger. Everyone looks for a partner who is their equal in social status. I can find such a handsome and wealthy boyfriend, naturally, because I'm already well qualified myself, beautiful and rich. Even if it weren't him, there would be other rich heirs chasing after me. So, you see, this is something I can't teach you." Winnie's face flushed and then paled at Lucy's words. She pursed her lips hesitantly before finally forcing a smile and saying, "You're right. Oh well, I definitely don't have the fate to marry into a wealthy family. I just hope I can find a decent job smoothly after graduation. Easy enough," Lucy said arrogantly, curling her crimson-painted lips. "My boyfriend's family runs a business. When the time comes, whichever position you fancy, it'll just take a word from him." "Really? Thank you, Lucy." Seeing Winnie hug Lucy tightly, I couldn't help but laugh out loud on the bed. Lucy immediately glared at me. "What are you laughing at?" I quickly picked up a book to cover my face. Sorry, I just suddenly thought of something happy, can't help it. Just thinking about how the yen master of the company Winnie is so eager to work for his Harry. I laughed so hard I feel like striking it rich. Honestly, in my simple and unadorned life, it's been a long time since I've had such an interesting drama to watch. I really wish I could stay by Lucy's side every day and enjoy the gossip to the fullest, but then the professor for my major course suddenly announced that there will be an in-class exam next week, which will count for 30% of the final grade. My soul nearly left my body, and I immediately switched into full-on study mode. On Friday night, the classrooms were packed, and the lecture hall was so crowded that I barely managed to find an empty seat, as it turned out. Sitting diagonally behind me were Harry and Lucy. As soon as Harry saw me, his face turned cold. My phone quickly received a text message from him. "We've already broken up. It's useless for you to show up in front of me just to get attention." I replied, "Have more self-awareness and less wishful thinking." After saying that, I turned off my phone and focused on reviewing. "So, Lucy and Harry started kissing behind me," I read. "The balance sheet is a reflection of the company's financial condition. The two of them, mwah." I tried hard to focus and continued reading. The left side of the balance sheet lists the company's assets, the two of them, me. The right side of the balance sheet shows the company's funding sources. Lucy, honey, you're so amazing. Unable to bear it any longer, I slammed the table and stood up. "What, can't you two even afford to get a room?" My voice was loud, and all the classmates around looked over. Lucy immediately blushed with embarrassment, her eyes welling up with tears. She scolded me, "Ella, this is a study room. How could you say such dirty words?" She thought the study room was like our dormitory, where everyone would side with her as soon as she spoke. Unexpectedly, the unfamiliar classmates didn't buy into her act at all. The girl nearest them pushed up her glasses and said discontentedly, "Do you even know this is a study room?" "Exactly. I've been wanting to say something for a while. Good thing this classmate spoke up for us. If you want to kiss, go outside. You might not need to study, but others do." Seeing Lucy's face turning increasingly red, Harry immediately activated his overprotective CEO mode. He shielded Lucy behind him and said coldly to the last student who spoke up, "Learn if you want. Even if you get full marks, you'll just end up working for us in the future." After saying that, he took Lucy and left. As they passed by me, Lucy muttered under her breath, "You're just jealous because we're so in love, so bitter. No man would ever want to marry you." I smiled and said, "How could I compare to a rich, beautiful girl like you? You've even had Botox in your brain, not a single wrinkle in there." Lucy was furious and even wanted to scold me, but Harry dragged her away forcefully. Just like that, the conflict between Lucy and me escalated completely. As a result, the day before the candlelight dinner, she gave invitations to everyone in our dorm except me. Some people probably have never been to a French garden dinner in their entire lives. Lucy sneered, "No worries, you can check out the photos we post later to broaden your horizons." Actually, I really haven't been there. I'm not a big fan of French food, but when she said that, I became defiant. That evening, the other roommates took Lucy's car and went to the restaurant together. I scanned a shared bike and wobbled my way there. When I arrived, Harry and Lucy were intimately kissing amidst the cheers of the crowd, but as soon as they saw me, their expressions changed. Harry frowned and asked Lucy, "Did you invite her?" Lucy shook her head and asked Harry to entertain the guests first, then walked toward me. "You're not welcome here. Get out." I suspect Lucy has been watching too many TV dramas, and she talks just like a vicious concubine from those old Republican-era shows. Meanwhile, I had just scored first on a pop quiz in my major class and was in a great mood, feeling quite eager to play along with her act. "What's the matter? Aren't we roommates?" I said with a smile. "Such a high-end restaurant. Miss Lucy, why not broaden my horizons?" Lucy was about to say something else when I suddenly pointed at her bag and exclaimed in surprise, "Oh, by the way, Miss Lucy, how come the bag you're carrying is a fake?" Lucy was stunned. "Impossible," she exclaimed sharply. "Really, the logo is in the wrong position, and the color is different from the genuine one. It's so obviously fake." Lucy examined the bag from left to right, and the more she looked, the less confident she felt, but she still insisted stubbornly, "You've never even carried a Chanel bag before, have you? What gives you the right?" I cut her off. "Whether I've carried one or not isn't important. Look, isn't Fiona over there? Her mom works in luxury goods authentication. Why don't you let her take a look at your bag to find out? Should I call her for you?" "Fiona." Lucy grabbed my arm abruptly. I pretended to be confused, but inside, I was secretly laughing. This bag is indeed fake. It was given to me by my mom when I was in middle school. It all started when I accidentally carried a Hermes bag while out shopping, got caught in a street photo, and ended up in several popular forum posts. Comments below said, "Carrying a Hermes at such a young age, she must have been born with a silver spoon in her mouth." My mom was so terrified, afraid I might get kidnapped again, that she immediately bought me several obviously fake knockoffs and forced me to carry them while shopping for a whole month. At the same time, she also hired people to repost on the forum, the follow-up to the little Girl with the Hermes bag is here. In the post, I was wearing counterfeit AJs, a Gucci shirt with the G printed backward, and carrying a Prada bag covered in loose threads. As a result, public opinion shifted to the little girl doesn't recognize brands and bought a bunch of fakes from the HerWhole wholesale market. The original Hermes bag was naturally also deemed fake. I'm finally safe. And my mom is quite pleased with her own cleverness. For years, these fake bags have been sitting in my closet. Lucy would pick a different one from my collection every day, and she finally hit a landmine at that moment. She grabbed my arm, her face turning pale. What are you yelling about? Since you're here, just eat properly and don't cause any trouble. I smiled contentedly and obediently, indicating that I wouldn't say anything. Lucy thought she had successfully bribed me with this French meal, so she felt a bit relieved and turned to look for Harry. I was the one who invited Ella, she said to Harry coquettishly. After all, she is my roommate, and it wouldn't be good to make things too awkward. Harry's expression turned grim. This doesn't match the number of people you told me earlier. Oh, just add one more person then. I see there are still plenty of empty seats. Lucy shook Harry's arm. The dining fee for one person is just over 2,000, and for you, honey, that's just a drop in the bucket, isn't it? Harry's face turned pale, but in front of the beautiful and wealthy woman, he couldn't show weakness. He was already wearing a watch worth millions, so there was no way he would fuss over a mere 2,000 yuan. So he called the waiter and, with the pain of being cut to the bone, paid the dining fee. While watching his agonized expression, I casually said to Lucy, I heard that when Harry was with his ex-girlfriend, he wouldn't even pay for a bowl of spicy hot pot. Now he spends $2,000 on you without blinking. He's really good to you. Surprisingly, Lucy was quite pleased by this remark. Haven't you seen what the relationship bloggers say? What kind of person deserves what kind of treatment? I laughed and continued pouring on the toxic positivity. Well, our Miss Lucy deserves all the wonderful things in the world, especially a once-in-a-lifetime wedding. When Harry proposes, shouldn't he get you a 3-carat pink diamond? Lucy's eyes lit up. My birthday is March 28th. Honey, why not buy a 3/28-carat pink diamond? Harry affectionately patted Lucy's head and readily agreed. Then he turned and glared angrily at me. I smiled and continued eating my foie gras, completely unfazed by his gaze. By now, I had finally figured out how the system worked. Whether it's Harry or Lucy, what they exchange for is the right to use the corresponding items, not ownership, and the things they can choose must be what I, the host, possess. As long as I tear up the fairy tale book, all their things must be returned to the original owner. In fact, Harry and Lucy probably know that they will be exposed sooner or later. After all, there are too many bugs in the system, and they can't pretend forever. Their plan is to get married first and figure out the rest later. As long as they get married, even if they divorce later, they can still walk away with a hefty sum from the wealthy family. It's a guaranteed profitable deal. They think they hold the golden key with their system, unaware that the other side is also equipped with a system, turning it into a showdown between two scammers. How many times in life do you get to witness such a thrilling battle between two master scammers? I chewed on the rich foie gras, watching Lucy and Harry embrace intimately, and revealed a genuinely happy smile. I went back home over the weekend. During the meal, my brother and I each gave an update on our recent situations. My brother improved by over 100 places in the final exams. My parents didn't react much. I told them that Harry and I had broken up. My parents were overjoyed, with tears of happiness streaming down their faces. My dad was so happy that he decided to give every employee in his company a bottle of wine. My mom called all her old friends, crying and saying that her daughter's long-standing obsession with romance had miraculously cured itself. I was speechless. If there was any other major event at this family dinner, it was my dad informing us that he had recently invested in a company specializing in providing security for high-net worth individuals. In other words, you two siblings no longer have to pretend to be poor. My dad excitedly showed us the materials about the security company. This company perfectly integrates technology and manpower, offering real-time satellite tracking and specially trained bodyguards who can be dispatched immediately when danger arises. I was quite happy, although what I use to wrap my textbooks doesn't really matter to me. But I really wanted to see Lucy and Harry's reactions when they found out about my family background, so when I returned to school on Sunday evening, I deliberately carried a Hermes Mini Kelly. When I got back to the dorm, Lucy and Winnie were chatting and didn't notice me. It was Fiona, who works in luxury authentication at home, who spotted it and immediately called out to me, Ella, can I take a look at the bag you're carrying? I handed it to her generously. Ella, you've started collecting Hermes too, Fiona said as she took my bag and asked, this model is super hard to get. How much did you have to spend on the purchase history, Lucy? finally took notice. She glanced over with a sidelong look and remarked coolly, "Fiona, why are you asking such a question? Ella has never even stepped into a Hermes boutique. How would she know about purchase history? She must have bought a fake." Fiona didn't agree with Lucy. She was carefully examining the bag in her hand with a serious expression. Lucy's expression began to darken. Having grown up in an environment where she was constantly exposed to such things, if Fiona couldn't spot any issues with a bag at such close range, then even if it was a replica, it must be of exceptionally high quality among counterfeits. "Not bad, Ella. A high-quality replica like this must cost at least 10,000, right?" Lucy said. "Spending so much just to satisfy your vanity. I really think it's not worth it for you." I silently drank water on the side, not refuting a single word. Verbal arguments are often feeble. Facts carry immense weight. Sure enough, Fiona examined it for a long time and murmured, "It feels real." Lucy's face instantly turned pale, and she said coldly, "Ella, do you have a store receipt?" I deliberately said slowly, "No, it was a gift from someone else." I wasn't lying either. This bag was indeed a gift from my grandmother, but Lucy's focus was only on the fact that I couldn't produce a receipt. She immediately breathed a sigh of relief and then let out a scornful laugh. "Fiona said, if you need, I can help you take it to my place for authentication." "No need." I picked up the bag. No matter what, a bag is just a bag. As long as it can be carried, it's fine. That matter was just let go, but I knew that this seed would remain in Lucy's heart, and a week later, something even more devastating happened to her. "Harry called me late at night after getting drunk," he said. "Actually, the one I love is you, but what can we do? Reality is just so cruel. We have to give up some things for the sake of what we truly want. I know you still love me too. If you didn't, you wouldn't keep showing up in front of me just to get my attention, so I think our fate isn't over yet. Marriage is just a formality to me. I have to marry Lucy, but we can still be together." "Bro, do you even hear what you're saying?" I'm so angry I could laugh. Harry has such a grand idea, marrying the wealthy Lucy and then having me be the third wheel. Isn't this guy just tied to a magic lamp system? Does he really think he's some kind of god? I don't even feel like complaining, so I put it on speakerphone. Lucy wasn't in the dorm, but Winnie was there sure enough. As soon as she heard Harry's voice, she perked up, as if she had stumbled upon some juicy gossip. Then she quietly picked up her phone and started recording. "Perfect. I'm sure she'll embellish the story when she tells Lucy." Soon it was the second weekend. I went home for a meal, and since it was too late, my dad asked the driver to take me back to school. As I got out of the car, I saw a flash in the distance, then two figures hurriedly ran past. It was Lucy and her little follower, Winnie. They really went through a lot of trouble, even deliberately waiting for me that night. When I went to the washroom to freshen up, Lucy stopped me. She said coldly, "Ella, you've also bound to that system, right?" I blinked my eyes. Oh, Lucy began to realize something was wrong. If that Hermes could still be explained as a counterfeit, witnessing me step out of a Maybach, that couldn't be faked. But Lucy didn't realize I was the true owner of these things. She just followed the logical assumption that I, too, was bound to the Cinderella system. I blinked and decided to play dumb. "Huh, what system?" Lucy gritted her teeth. "I'm warning you, Ella, Harry is mine. Don't even think about taking him away." I sincerely said to her, "Believe me, I absolutely have no intention of competing with you." But Lucy didn't believe me. To completely cut off my options, a set of photos was exposed on the campus forum the next day. Under the dim light, I was getting out of the Maybach. The caption read, "Ella from the finance department hooked up with a sugar daddy." Below were all sorts of vulgar comments, all calling me shameless. Her roommate Lucy is a top-tier rich and beautiful girl. She got jealous of her carrying Hermes and riding in luxury cars, so she went and found herself a sugar daddy. Ugh, how disgusting. Lucy is beautiful, kind-hearted, and has an elegant aura. What does she have to compare with Lucy? Exactly, Lucy is the true goddess. She and Harry are a perfect match. Goddess with god, evenly matched, a heavenly pair, judging by the tone. I'm quite sure these comments were all posted by Lucy herself. Lucy's goal is to ruin my reputation, so that the wealthy young Master Harry would never marry a gold digger like me, whose dark history is known to everyone. But she overlooked the fact that the Maybach I was sitting in was the same one she had flaunted while eating barbecue. Soon, some observant people noticed this detail, and the direction of the comments started to shift a bit. "Wait a minute, isn't this Lucy's car? So, the person supporting Ella is Lucy. Did the person upstairs have a brain short circuit? How could Lucy possibly be keeping Ella? If anyone were to keep her, it would only be Lucy's father. Lucy's father keeping Ella, then he's not a good person either." Agree with the person above. Family education is very important. Growing up in such a messy family, can Lucy really Be beautiful on the outside and kind on the inside. Lucy was so angry her nostrils flared. Winnie comforted her. Lucy, these are just jealous people being bitter. Anyway, tomorrow is your wedding with Harry. You need to be incredibly happy and make these jealous haters furious. Lucy forced herself to calm down. It seemed like she was responding to Winnie, yet also talking to herself. Tomorrow, everything will be settled. Yes, tomorrow everything will be settled. My Cinderella, I flipped through the fairy tale book on the bed and revealed a faint smile. Harry and Lucy chose a hotel in the city center for their wedding banquet. I have to say, they have good taste. My mom even has shares in this hotel. Due to previous commitments, Harry naturally had to make the event exceptionally grand to reflect his identity as a wealthy young man. Lucy certainly didn't miss the chance to shine and make a statement. She invited every classmate she could from the entire school, just so everyone could get a good look at her extravagant wedding and see who would dare gossip about her in the future. On the day of the engagement banquet, the leading lady, Lucy, was still getting ready. As an enthusiastic audience member, I arrived at the scene quite early. Harry had also arrived early. After all, this wedding banquet was his last wish to the magic lamp, so he definitely wanted to be there early to keep an eye on things. When he saw me, Harry's gaze turned bitter, and he immediately pulled me into an empty corridor. His expression was filled with the pain of betrayal. Ella, just because I'm marrying someone else, you're deliberately hooking up with a rich guy to spite me, aren't you? This idiot's thought process is truly astonishing. I couldn't even find an angle to argue against it for a moment. Your money-grubbing attitude disgusts me. I might as well have thrown my sincerity to the dogs, Harry said with deep anguish. I rolled my eyes. Harry, you don't actually think I've been pining for you with undying affection after we broke up, do you? Could you please shake your brain cells into coherence before talking to me like that? Harry was furious and humiliated, and from his reaction, it seemed he really did think that way. He roared, "Do you think you're so proud of yourself for snagging a rich guy with your body and face? Let me tell you, with your quality, I could get a whole row of girls like you at a KTV for 20,000. What are you doing?" From Harry's perspective, I was probably doing something very strange. I took a fairy tale book out of my bag and quickly tore out a few pages. After tearing those pages, I gave Harry a mysterious smile. "All right, Harry, don't waste time with me. Go prepare for your wedding." After saying that, I turned and left. There was only 1 hour left until the wedding began. I looked at the torn pages from the fairy tale book in my hand. They were from Aladdin and the magic lamp. Harry's system was now useless. The real show was finally about to begin. I took out a bag of sunflower seeds and started munching while watching Harry. At first, he acted all high and mighty, bossing the waitstaff around and putting on the airs of a young master. "Where are my 99,999 roses airlifted from Yunnan, and the platinum-colored candlestick centerpieces I requested? Hurry up and set them up. Bring me the menu again. Are there enough soft-centered abalones?" These were all part of his wish to the magic lamp, a wedding of the century. After shouting his orders, Harry crossed his legs and waited, but a moment later, the supervisor came over. "What's going on? Where are my things?" Harry said coldly. "I'm sorry, sir." The headwaiter, dressed in a high-end uniform, asked politely but coldly, "Do you have a reservation?" Harry was stunned. This issue should not have occurred. This wedding should be just like that French candlelit dinner back then, where as soon as he made a wish, his name would automatically appear on the restaurant's reservation list, showing that the bill had already been settled. "Of course I have a reservation," Harry retorted defiantly. "We don't have any information related to you in our system," the host said. "Of course, since there are no other guest reservations at our venue today, it's still possible for you to make a payment now." Harry was dumbfounded. He finally realized something was wrong. "How would you like to pay? If by card, please follow me to the front desk," the waiter said. Wait a moment." Harry was about to go crazy. The people around him were looking at him with strange gazes, and under these stares, Harry's face grew redder and redder. He had no choice but to turn around and run into the men's restroom. This enthusiastic spectator had no choice but to follow and move to the area outside the men's restroom. I thought that, since I couldn't enter the men's restroom, I would miss the climax of the show, but then Harry started roaring inside. "System, where's the system? Respond to me." Oh, he must be getting anxious, receiving no response from his mental call to the system. The frantic men finally shouted out loud, "You clearly said there were 3 chances. This is the 3rd. Are you going back on your word?" "Didn't expect that, Harry. The system doesn't have the final say. I'm the one who calls the shots." When Lucy arrived, she saw Harry slumped to the side, his face extremely pale. The hair gel in his hair was soaked through with cold sweat that kept pouring out, making him look utterly disheveled. "I'm sorry, Lucy. I've run into a bit of trouble. Is there any chance you could handle the engagement preparations first? Lucy screamed. What, Harry, are you insane? Everyone will be here in 20 minutes, and you're telling me now that you haven't prepared anything? Yes, Harry didn't even have a decent suit. He had just spent all his money paying the hotel venue fee and couldn't afford anything else. But it was clear that he still wanted to grit his teeth and go through with the wedding. After all, he couldn't afford to lose face like this, and having dreamed of being a wealthy family's live-in son-in-law for so long, he subconsciously didn't want to give up. Really, Lucy, I'm so sorry about this. I'll explain it to you later, okay? Lucy was absolutely furious, but in 20 minutes, everyone would be here. She had always cared the most about her reputation, and she had already bragged about this lavish wedding at school countless times. There was no way she could bear the thought of her classmates arriving only to see a complete joke. She gritted her teeth and said, "Wait for me a moment." Lucy turned and went to the fitting room. She activated the Cinderella system. Yes, Lucy and Harry's wedding was held in the evening. As for the strange timing, her explanation was that the evening was an auspicious time, and wealthy families place great importance on such things, which we ordinary people don't understand. The truth is, her vintage wedding dress was obtained from the Cinderella system, so it couldn't be worn during the day. Fortunately, the wedding was scheduled for the evening, allowing Lucy to use the Cinderella system to desperately bring all sorts of items to the venue: the gown, high heels, diamond jewelry, top-tier wine, and various decorations. When the classmates arrived at the venue, they witnessed an extremely bizarre wedding. There were no decorations at the venue apart from the hotel's own embellishments. The dishes chosen were of the lowest grade, with very small portions, leaving everyone hungry. Each table was set with a bottle of fine wine, but the wine varied from table to table. Is this what a wealthy family's wedding is like? Harry heard everyone's discussion and took a deep breath, determined to regain his momentum, so he picked up the Dom Perignon beside him and was about to open the bottle. Lucy suddenly screamed, "Don't move." No one knew what was wrong with her. "Only I know." The system's prompt sounded in Lucy's ear, a warning tone. Cinderella only has the right to use borrowed items and must return them in their original condition when the time expires. Otherwise, any loss will be borne by Cinderella herself. In other words, she could only borrow all these things for show, but she did not have corresponding ownership. This wine cannot be drunk. If she drinks it, she'll have to pay for it. A bottle of Dom Perignon actually costs around 2,000 RMB on average, but that's already far beyond Lucy's spending capacity. After all, she's the kind of person who goes to the bathroom when it's time to pay the bill after having barbecue. "What are you doing, Lucy?" Harry said. "You're spoiling everyone's fun." Lucy gritted her teeth. She was in a difficult position. She had borrowed these bottles of wine to set up the display, and she couldn't possibly leave them all unopened. Forget it. As long as the wedding goes smoothly, she'll marry Harry. Then all this money is just small change. So Lucy nodded. With a pop, the Dom Perignon sprayed out beautiful foam. The guests below also started opening their bottles of wine. The system's warning sound kept ringing, and in the blink of an eye, Lucy's debt had reached 200,000. These would directly show up on her credit card debt. The subsequent wedding ceremony was extremely perfunctory, since the pastor, choir, and even the large diamond ring, all obtained by making wishes with Aladdin's lamp, had disappeared. The MC on stage was a friend Harry had hastily found. There wasn't enough food, and everyone was complaining incessantly. The entire wedding was like a farce. Harry and Lucy's faces grew increasingly grim. When they came to propose a toast, Lucy, who was already on the verge of breaking down, burst into a torrent of abuse the moment she saw me. "How dare you show your face?" she shrieked. "You're not welcome at my wedding," I said calmly. "Out of respect for your special day, I'll give you one last chance, while everyone is here. You can clarify that you were the one who posted those things online, that you were the one spreading rumors about me." Lucy put down her glass and pointed at me, her sharp nails almost touching my face. "There's nothing to clarify. A bitch like you deserves to live in hell." I suddenly laughed. The room fell silent, and everyone turned to look at me. I smiled faintly, then looked at Harry and said softly, "How does it feel to have your third wish invalidated?" No one else understood what that meant, but Harry's face instantly turned as pale as a corpse. He murmured in utter terror, "You." I stopped looking at him and turned my gaze to Lucy, who was still in the dark. "I gave you one last chance, and you refused it yourself," I said coldly. Then, I pulled out the fairy tale book and tore out several pages in one swift motion. "Dear Cinderella, the game is over. Let the carriage turn back into a pumpkin, the coachman into a mouse, and the beautiful gown into old clothes, and my dear roommate, life is not a fairy tale. So you can't even keep a single glass slipper. In fact, people who are far Away can't really notice any changes, but Lucy let out a scream. She noticed it. The diamond-studded bracelet on her wrist and the expensive jewelry around her neck had vanished in an instant. Most importantly, the voice of the system in her mind was gone. "Ella, what have you done?" I sneered coldly, watching Lucy as she seemed about to lunge at me. "I've been considerate enough to save your dignity. If you keep this up, I'll take back this evening gown you're wearing too." Lucy froze instantly, covering her chest with her hands. "I'll have it dry cleaned and then return it to you." I stood up, ready to leave. Wait a moment. The person who called out to me was actually Harry. He had picked up on a hint from our conversation. "Ella, did you lend all those things to Lucy? So the real rich and beautiful girl is actually you, right? I knew it. I always said you gave me a special feeling." Harry ran over and grabbed me. "The one I've always loved is you." I shook off his hand. "All right, Harry, you can fool others, but don't try to pull that act with me." I glanced at Lucy. "You'd better ask your Harry what his parents do and what the stock code of their listed company is that allows him to be so outrageously extravagant. Or perhaps, like you, he's relying on external help too." Lucy froze for a moment, then let out a scream and lunged at Harry. She finally caught on. "You liar," she cried out. "Give me back my 200,000. You're the liar." Harry dodged repeatedly, looking utterly disheveled, pretending to be some rich girl. I spit on that. Nearby, Lucy's best friend Winnie let out a sharp scream and joined the fray, grappling with Lucy. All these days, she had been helping Lucy sign in for classes, carrying Lucy's shopping bags, running errands for her, and even turned down her own internship opportunity just to have time to help Lucy with her final project. I watched the people fighting in a tangle and sighed silently, then shouldered my bag and left. Today's incident is bound to become a sensational news story that will be talked about throughout the school. Fortunately, I'm about to graduate soon. Once that happens, I won't be staying at school anymore. I'll be going home to inherit the family business. A month later, a new intern joined the company at the grassroots level. She asked everyone to call her Wendy, carried a canvas bag, and seemed very cheerful. Some people in the company really liked her, others took advantage of her lack of background to boss her around and bully her. Wendy didn't mind these things. Even when she felt wronged, she would flip through a few pages of a fairy tale book, and her mood would lift. "Yes, I am Wendy," to train me. My parents first assigned me to the grassroots level of the company. They wanted me to keep a low profile and experience life. I was very happy. This simple and unadorned life is just right for me. Easter egg. After the wedding, Lucy became the target of everyone's criticism at our school. While enduring everyone's pointing fingers, she also had to painfully repay the debts she owed. As for Harry, after the system was voided, his watch naturally returned to my brother's hands. My brother was completely unaware of this matter. He had no use for the watch and only relied on the calendar. His deskmate had told him to focus on studying and not to fall in love too early, that they could only be together when they turned 18. So, my brother started marking off the days every day. He still had 2,172 days left before he could be with the girl he loved. My brother, unable to be with the one he loved, would write 500-word emo stories in the comment section of Nettie's Cloud Music every day. So you see, the lives of the rich also come with many troubles. Back to Harry. I don't know what got into him, but he actually tried to imitate the crazy male leads from online novels and wanted to kidnap and imprison me. He rushed at me on my way to get barbecue, attempting to knock me out with a single blow from a stick. Unfortunately, he didn't know I had already bound myself to the Snow White system using a fairy tale book. Whenever I'm in danger, 7 men would come to rescue me. Then 7 men descended from the sky. They were all professionals from the security company my father had invested in. Harry was quickly subdued by them and then taken away by the police, and my phone was already ringing. "Wendy, come to the company quickly. There's a lot of work today." Coming. Carrying an eco-friendly bag and wearing canvas shoes, I merged into the rush hour crowd at the subway. After hearing the second story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. As an unattractive girl, my best friend encouraged me to confess my feelings to the most handsome boy in class, but secretly recorded the moment I was humiliated. The video went viral online. Before I could even open my Harvard acceptance letter, I jumped from a tall building. When I woke up, I found myself reborn on the first day of my senior year of high school. Looking at my life from a new perspective, I realized how miserable I used to be. Just like now, my classmate Jack yelled, "Hey fatty, do my homework for me," while throwing his workbook at my head. He said with a grin, "Oops, my hand slipped. It's all because you take up so much space." I reached out and tore the workbook in half. He yelled, "Mia, are you crazy?" I said coldly, "It's already torn, so what?" He rolled up his sleeves and walked over, saying, "I never hit women, but you don't count as one. Today, I'm going to hit you anyway." I stood up and pushed him 2 meters away with a single shove. Strange, with grades ranking first in the school and weighing 170 pounds, why did I let them bully me in my previous life? The boy was still cursing under his breath when the prettiest girl in the class, my deskmate Hannah, walked over. She frowned and said, "Jack, you are not allowed to bully Mia." Faced with the class beauty, Jack's tone softened considerably as he muttered, "No, who's bullying whom?" Hannah smiled at me. "Mia, are you okay? Don't mind them, they're a bunch of lunatics." This scene felt so familiar. In my past life, Hannah had saved me like this many times, and I was endlessly grateful to her. I was so grateful to her that when she asked me to help her cheat, I couldn't bring myself to refuse in the end. Thanks to her high usual grades, Hannah was recommended by the principal for admission to a 985 university before the college entrance exam. After the college entrance exams, I achieved near-perfect scores in every subject, becoming the top scorer in the province that year and making headlines in many news outlets. Hannah had always been unable to tolerate others stealing the spotlight from her. While she said congratulations to my face, behind my back, she meticulously plotted to push me to the brink. In the evening, Hannah invited me to the small cafeteria to eat rice noodles and thoughtfully gave me a piece of fried egg soaked in oil. She said, "Mia, I can't eat anymore. Please help me out." How did I only just realize that she always says she can't eat anymore, but she always orders? I quietly pushed the fried egg aside. Although I'm overweight, I don't actually enjoy such greasy food. My obesity started from the hormonal effects of medication I took when I was young and sick. Later, it was because I was bullied and felt depressed, and when I was emotionally overwhelmed, I would hide and binge on sweets. After being fortunate enough to be reborn, I no longer avoid this issue. Hannah rolled her eyes and started talking about Emmett. "Mia, Emmett mentioned you the other day. He said he thinks you're really cute." I didn't take the bait and instead asked her, "I heard you and Emmett are secretly dating." Hannah quickly replied, "That's not true. It's all just rumors. Emmett doesn't like me at all. He just sees me as a good friend." I sneered inwardly. Good friend? Would a good friend secretly stuff milk tea into your drawer? Emmett was very handsome and had excellent grades. He kept his distance from other girls but showed special affection only to Hannah. Hannah enjoyed this ambiguous relationship but never gave Emmett a clear answer. After all, he came from a poor family, and Hannah felt that he was like a piece of chicken rib, tasteless to eat but a pity to discard. I know Hannah's target is Frank in the same class. Frank seems lazy and carefree, only thinking about playing ball all day, but in reality, he is the son of the wealthiest family in H City and never intended to take the college entrance exam domestically. Frank and I used to play together as children, but after I got sick, I wrapped myself up like a silkworm spinning a cocoon. He came to play with me, but I turned him away time and time again, until that day, when it was raining heavily. Frank stood pitifully downstairs holding a small pig plush toy for a long time, and I still didn't open the window. He left and never appeared again. I snapped back to reality from my memories, put down my chopsticks, and Hannah asked thoughtfully, "Mia, are you feeling unwell today? Why are you eating so little?" She looked at me with a smile and said, "How about you eat the fried egg, soaked in the rice noodle soup? It tastes amazing." In the past, I would never have been able to refuse, but this time I just smiled, stood up, and walked out of the small cafeteria. When I got home after evening self-study, the nanny, Aunt Hong, greeted me with a warm smile. "Miss, I've prepared some late-night snacks for you." She brought out a full plate of fried chicken and french fries. Suddenly, a voice whispered in my ear, "Just a reminder, Aunt Hong is Hannah's mother." When I was reborn, this voice appeared, claiming to be a newly activated system, but it would do its best to help me. In its words, we were both tackling a revenge mission for the first time and needed to work hard together. I gradually got used to conversing with it and responded, "Didn't Hannah say her mother was a Gujing teacher? Why is she working as a nanny in my house?" "So, her father might not be a professor at the local university either." The system laughed. "Your good friend is quite the liar, isn't she?" I looked up at Aunt Hong and noticed a silk scarf tied around her neck, clearly something from my mother's wardrobe. My parents travel all over the world and have entrusted me to Aunt Hong's care, but it seems she now considers herself the mistress of this house. Taking without asking is theft, and she's grown so accustomed to it that she no longer gives it a second thought. A plan quietly took shape in my mind. I didn't eat that greasy dish. Aunt Hong smiled and said, "It's fine," but her eyes couldn't hide the disgust. Over the weekend, I received a call from Hannah, inviting me to the largest KTV in H City. She used to do this often, claiming it was to help me get along with my classmates. But in reality, my only roles were to foot the bill in the end. and serve as a foil to her beauty and kindness. When I arrived, Hannah was singing with abandon, while Emmett sat aloofly in the corner, occasionally glancing over at her. Frank was leaning on the sofa playing a game, and when he saw me arrive, a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I knew what he was thinking. In a previous life, during a family gathering, he sat next to me and said, "Stop hanging out with Hannah. She's not a good person." At that time, my face flushed red, and I said to him, "Please don't speak ill of my friend." Frank sneered, "If you're willing to be a sucker, who am I to stop you?" He immediately stood up and moved to another seat. As the song ended, Hannah glanced around and casually said to Frank, "Do you want to sing? I can switch the song for you." Without even lifting his eyelids, Frank replied, "No." Hannah awkwardly withdrew her hand, ignoring Emmett's watchful gaze from the corner, and asked me with feigned concern, "Mia, do you want to sing?" She just asked casually, without even waiting for my answer. Already thinking about which song to sing next, I said, "Sing it, help me skip." In the corner, Jack led the teasing laughter. "What kind of old-fashioned song is this?" I then looked at Hannah, who was standing there with her mouth agape. "Skip the song. I inherited a good voice from my mother, who is the lead soprano in the orchestra. So singing in KTV is like bringing a gun to a knife fight." As soon as I started singing, Hannah froze. She's not deaf. She knew her forced, cutesy voice could only mesmerize simps like Jack. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Hannah's uneasy and complicated expression, and it gave me such satisfaction that I sang even more effortlessly. At some point, Frank had put down his phone. He clapped softly. For such a big guy, the way he clapped, palm to palm, was actually quite endearing. I vaguely remember that on the day of the kindergarten graduation performance, that little boy clapped his hands read for me in the audience. A few days later, the school invited a well-known scholar in the education field to visit and called for 2 students from the entire school to welcome the guest. As the host of the school's evening party, Hannah was unsurprisingly selected. She recommended Frank as her partner. A group of people gathered at the school gate to welcome the guests, and the TV station crew also arrived. Hannah quickly moved to Professor Williams' left side and said sweetly, "Hello, I'm Hannah from Class 10, Grade 12. I'll be accompanying you throughout the tour today." She winked at Frank outside the crowd, but he just put his hands in his pockets and casually looked around. Frank waved to me, "Mia, come over here. It's Uncle Wu." Hearing his shout, Professor Williams followed Frank's gaze and smiled, saying, "Mia, you've grown into a young lady." Professor Williams was my dad's college classmate. Back when I went to Beijing for treatment, he was the one who helped run around and take care of things. Uncle Wu patted my shoulder and asked with a smile, "So, how are you enjoying your time at H High School? Is the pressure of senior year getting to you?" Seeing this, the TV crews quickly turned their cameras toward us. The principal quickly added, "Mia is the top student in our senior year, always ranking first in her grade. She excels in every aspect, morally, intellectually, physically, artistically." And in labor, Hannah was pushed out, and a new reporter accidentally stepped hard on her brand new white sneakers. Hannah bent down to wipe them but tripped and fell to the ground. She cried out of grievance, and only then did everyone notice her again. The principal called out to her, "Hannah." Hannah looked up, full of anticipation. The principal waved his hand, "Mia is enough here. You can go back to the classroom." On the day the photo was posted on the bulletin board, Hannah looked at her distorted face in the corner and stomped her feet in anger. When no one was around after school, she opened the glass frame of the bulletin board, pulled down the photo, and tore it to shreds. Hannah came up with many ideas to embarrass me, but I unintentionally avoided them all. It wasn't until the spring sports meet that she found her chance for revenge. A few days before the sports meet began, she seized the opportunity to cozy up to the class sports committee member, asking him to open her drink bottle, pretending to grab his arm in surprise, all her usual tricks. I was already tired of seeing it, but what can you do when some guys just fall for that kind of thing? The sports committee member, in a daze, wrote my name on the 800-meter race list. On the day of the sports meet, the loudspeaker announced, "Next event, girls 800-meter long-distance run, Class 10, Grade 12, Mia." The classmates started shouting, with Jack being the most enthusiastic. "Wow. Making that fat girl run 800 meters, isn't that like asking for her life? Oh my God, please don't embarrass our class. How could she have the nerve to sign up? Is she out of her mind?" I was about to stand up, but Frank grabbed my sleeve. "Mia, pretend you sprained your ankle. I'll carry you to the infirmary right now." His bright, dark eyes were full of concern and my heart ached. If I hadn't lost this friend in my past life, maybe everything would have been different. I patted the back of his hand, just like I used to comfort him when we were kids. Then I winked and said, "Don't worry, I can do it. After being reborn, I hired a personal trainer and a nutritionist to create a scientific diet and fitness plan for me, and I worked hard to stick with it. In fact, I've already lost a lot of weight, but the oversized school uniform hides the noticeable changes. Today's 800-meter long-distance run, I'll treat it as a milestone to commemorate my progress, the system said in my ear. Are you sure you want to try? If it's just for revenge, you don't have to go through all this trouble. I replied like this, I want to finish the run, it means a lot to me. The starting gun fired, and I began to run. I didn't pay attention to the classmates running past me, focusing only on maintaining a steady rhythm of breathing and moving my steps. The track is 400 meters per lap, so 800 meters only requires 2 laps. By the time I reached the first quarter of the second lap, my steps began to feel heavy. Just then, a clear voice sounded beside me, and I caught a glimpse of a white shirt out of the corner of my eye. Frank said, "You're running well, lift your head." He had been running alongside me on the inner side of the track. I lifted my head, facing the spring sun and the gentle breeze, and a sudden surge of energy made me quicken my pace. I ran, and just as I was about to see the finish line, I suddenly felt I still had some energy left, so I lowered my head and sprinted, finally crossing the finish line. I couldn't wait to sit down right there on the grass, but Frank grabbed my wrist and pulled me up. "Don't sit down, keep walking a bit." He was in front of me, leisurely jogging backward, facing me with a smile that revealed his white teeth. "Let me tell you, that last sprint just now helped me overtake quite a few people. They were all dumbfounded. No one does things like you." I thought about how Hannah was probably so angry she was pulling her own hair, and I couldn't help but laugh. Hannah hated me with a burning passion. She couldn't stand others stealing the spotlight, especially someone she used to look down on, but when she needed to use me, she could still pretend to be my good friend. The school has several principal recommendation spots each year, and those who are recommended usually get admitted with significantly lower scores. The recommendation eligibility depends on the usual grades. Hannah lowered her head to calculate for a moment, then looked at me with a seemingly troubled expression and said, "Mia, I really wish we could be in the same city for university. 2. You're definitely going to get into Tsinghua or Harvard, but I'm not so sure about myself. If I want to go to the capital, I'll need to score a lot higher. If you could help me out and let me take a look at your paper during the exam, I might be able to get the principal's recommendation for direct admission." The position for the midterm exam in H has always been fixed, and since Hannah happened to be sitting right behind me, she came up with this brilliant idea. This was a perfect opportunity for revenge that fell right into my lap, so I agreed without hesitation. She cooed sweetly, "Wow, you're so good to me, you're my best friend, Mia." I sneered coldly, recalling what the system had told me about the contents of Hannah's diary. "It seems Mia has lost a bit of weight recently, but she's still as fat as a pig. I haven't been able to control my appetite lately and have gained some weight, fortunately." Sitting next to Mia provides the perfect comparison, making me look slender, delicate, and pitifully charming. We can't let her keep losing weight. I need to ask Mom to prepare some more medicine. With that awful appearance, she still dares to sing at KTV. Jack said she's disgusting, and I agree. After enjoying the glory of being among the top students in the grade for many monthly exams, Hannah completely lost interest in her studies. At first, she would still try to complete the exams on her own, but as she became more skilled at cheating, she simply waited for my answers. Soon enough, the day came to apply for the recommendation qualification. Many students with better grades in the school aim to strive for Tsinghua University or Harvard, willingly giving up recommendation opportunities from other schools, which gave Hannah a chance to compete for Yale. After doing some calculations, she realized there was only one person standing in her way. That person was Kathy. Kathy was a quiet and introverted girl with fair skin, large eyes, and a soft spoken manner, a model student. She never used underhanded tactics to subtly encourage boys to court her, nor did she seek attention. Instead, she kept her hair in a simple bob and focused on her studies. In her previous life, she was Hannah's first victim. Just because Kathy had helped Frank and received a CD from him on his birthday, Hannah, out of jealousy, plotted to ruin her. I have already deduced what happened back then. Kathy liked Emmett, and one day she received a love letter from him. Overwhelmed with the joy of her secret crush coming true, she went to a date initiated by him, only to be raped in a dark corner of the city. Unable to bear the trauma, she went insane. With no money for her treatment, Kathy went from a promising student to a madwoman on the streets. Hannah was ruthless and decisive, taking action without hesitation in this lifetime. She planned to use the poem copied by Emmett as a fake love letter, praising his beautiful handwriting and asking him to help copy You live upstream, I downstream, day by day of you I think, but you are not in view, yet we both drink from river blue. When will these waters cease to flow? When will this grief no longer grow? I wish your heart would be like mine, then not in vain for you I'd pine. This poem, copied by Emmett, stirred his imagination endlessly. Hannah slipped the poem into Kathy's book and texted her to meet after school. As the Chinese class representative, Kathy immediately recognized Emmett's handwriting and didn't suspect a thing. After school, she walked alone toward an unfamiliar alley. I had hired a retired military man in advance to follow her with me. The thud grinned menacingly as he reached out toward Kathy, but the uncle kicked him to the ground in an instant and asked me, "Is that all?" Kathy looked at me, still shaken. As I stood with my hands on my hips, I said, "Young lady, welcome to the harsh reality of the world. You need to be braver and more cautious, you know." Kathy, who had previously lacked confidence, suddenly matured. With my encouragement, she stepped forward to compete with Hannah and successfully secured the recommendation for admission to Yale. She knitted a scarf for me, with very neat stitches. I wrapped it around my neck and felt very warm. She said to me, "Mia, thank you so much. I'm sorry I never did anything for you before." But I replied, "What do you mean you didn't? Weren't you the one who quietly slipped my math homework back in when the class representative took it out, while you were handing in the Chinese assignment?" After being reborn, I realized that the most sincere kindness in this world is often shy and reserved, unlike Hannah's kindness toward me, which always had to be made known to everyone. Hannah couldn't hold back anymore and cursed in front of me. "Kathy is so scheming." She clearly said she felt unqualified, yet she secretly applied anyway. She said irritably, "What should I do now, Mia? It's all because of you. You said my scores were enough, so you didn't let me copy that one time." I frowned, realizing her slip of the tongue. She quickly laughed to make amends. "Oh, dear, I'm not blaming you. I'm just so sad that we won't be in the same city." She threw herself into my arms, sobbing. "Ing." I said in a nonchalant tone, "What's so great about Yale? It's far behind Tsinghua and Harvard. I want you to go to the same school as me." "Tsinghua or Harvard, which do you prefer?" Hannah widened her eyes in disbelief. You have a way, of course. I have connections. I can help you with the college entrance exam." Overjoyed, Hannah once again forgot to maintain her persona and proudly laughed. "When the time comes, we'll have to organize exclusive alumni gatherings for Tsinghua and Harvard. We can't bring along anyone else who ends up in Beijing." Watching her smug expression, I chuckled inwardly but only said, "No problem." Hannah asked, "Mia, haven't you been eating well lately? You've lost so much weight. I'm really worried about you." How could I not lose weight? Did I take those expensive personal training classes for nothing? I bought a box of medicine with English packaging and deliberately said to Aunt Hong, "My mom sent me some brain-boosting medicine." Aunt Hong's eyes lit up as she watched me put the medicine in the cabinet. She wanted to steal it again. Meanwhile, the system quietly reminded me that the weight gain pills with high levels of hormones, which Aunt Hong had asked someone to find, were also ready. Everything is set up. The first official act of revenge is about to begin. As expected, Aunt Hong stole the pills from the cabinet, treasuring them as if they were a priceless treasure. She took them home and, on schedule, mixed them into the milk before serving it to her precious daughter. As for me, I used the excuse of needing to study in my room and never ate any food from home again. Living under the same roof as the venomous Aunt Hong is far from enjoyable, but I need to keep her around so I can crush Hannah all at once. Under Aunt Hong's relentless milk attacks, Hannah grew fatter day by day. I'm simply giving them a taste of their own medicine. If it weren't for that mother-daughter pair, I wouldn't even know such malicious things existed. I have to say, Hannah is really tough on herself. In order to lose weight, she often skips meals and goes running on the playground. Until that time, she fainted on the playground, and Emmett, heartbroken, carried her into the infirmary. He confessed to Hannah again. "Hannah, seeing you like this breaks my heart." Hannah was originally determined to reject him, but when she caught sight of the beautiful student volunteer in the infirmary behind Emmett looking dejected, her vanity drove her to inexplicably nod in agreement. She got herself into a big trouble. Emmett always stared at her intently and occasionally slipped small gifts into her drawer. Hannah angrily wrote in her diary, "How tacky, who still wears a self-knitted scarf." These days, she quietly threw the scarf knitted by Emmett into the trash can. I hung the scarf stained with fruit peels and drink juice on the school forum. "This is a scarf lost by a student. Please come to the lost and found to claim it." Emmett saw this post and instantly turned red and pale. I remembered the humiliation he had inflicted on me in my previous life. That day, encouraged by Hannah, I offered Emmett a piece of cream cake at her house. Emmett furrowed his handsome brows and said in a Cold voice, I don't eat this kind of thing. Please keep your distance from me from now on. Although you're unattractive and Hannah wouldn't misunderstand, I still don't want to be liked by you. Before he could finish his words, Jack, who was hiding behind the sofa, burst into a roar of laughter. Help, the female toad wants to eat the male swan. His remark became the hottest meme online at the time. Whenever someone wanted to see what a toad looked like, Jack would immediately post a photo in the comments section. My face was photoshopped into all kinds of funny images, specifically used to mock ungrateful and unattractive girls. Emmett and Jack were also among those who added fuel to the fire. I will take revenge on all of them. The days of senior year passed quickly. Hannah was distracted by Emmett and had to deal with her sudden weight gain, leaving almost no time for studying. She kept confirming with me again and again, Mia, you can help me, right? I pretended to be angry. If you don't believe me, then forget it. In fact, my lies were full of holes. I told her that my parents would help bribe the proctors before the exam and that the answers would be transmitted to the exam hall through a specially designed watch, but Hannah was too trusting of power and too greedy. She fantasized about throwing a grand celebration after getting into Tsinghua or Harvard and was unwilling to doubt me. On the day of the college entrance exam, during the first subject, Chinese, no matter how she fiddled with it, Hannah realized she had been given just an ordinary mechanical watch, which made her restless and anxious. After waiting for a long time and seeing that the exam was almost over, she couldn't hold back any longer and stood up, wanting to go out and find me. The proctor sternly told her to sit down and remain quiet. Hannah, however, said, "Mind your own business." The proctor could hardly believe his ears. He glanced up at the functioning camera and warned Hannah, who is almost out of the classroom, "Student, if you don't sit down immediately, you will be disqualified from this exam for serious misconduct." Hannah stubbornly left the examination room. She rushed to my house just in time to see Auntie Hong caught red-handed for theft, being brought by the police to identify the scene. Upon seeing Hannah, a glimmer of hope reignited in Auntie Hong's eyes. "Hannah, please beg for mercy on my behalf." I feigned surprise and exclaimed, "Hannah, isn't your mother a Guzheng teacher?" "Yes, my mother is a Guzheng teacher. This is not my mother." Hannah took a few steps back, avoiding Auntie Hong's outstretched hand trying to pull her. Aunt Hong's face was ashen, and just before being taken into the police car, she let out a desperate sob. "I was counting on you to give me a good life, but who knew you'd turn out to be such an ungrateful wretch? I should have known earlier. Your father was a gigolo and a fraudster. How could you possibly be any good?" Hannah ignored her and urgently grabbed my hand. "Mia, the watch you gave me isn't working. I didn't get the answers. Do you have any other way?" I laughed and said, "For the college entrance exam, aside from taking it yourself, what other way could there be?" Hannah instantly realized she had been tricked by me, let out a scream, and tried to pounce on me to hit me. The police had never seen someone so brazen. Stunned for a moment, out of professional habit, they still managed to subdue her. I told her, "Actually, if you just stop drinking the milk your mother brings you every night, you wouldn't have to put in so much effort to lose weight. I think you understand exactly what I'm saying." Hannah's mind raced, and she yelled at Aunt Hong, "You idiot, you fool, you've killed me." Aunt Hong spat at her from a distance. "Serves you right." Watching the mother and daughter tear into each other with such ferocity, I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer variety of people in this world. I moved to another place and steadily completed the remaining exams. Hannah left her own exam behind, determined to break into my examination hall. Blocked firmly from entering, she collapsed to the ground in tears, her beautiful dress covered in dust. As the final exam ended, Emmett walked out of the hall and barely recognized the thrashing. Sobbing Hannah on the ground, she tugged at Emmett's sleeve. "You're all I have now." A flicker of disgust crossed Emmett's face, and he instinctively wanted to shake off Hannah's hand, but under the watchful eyes of everyone, he didn't dare to make such a move. He took off his school uniform jacket, wrapped it around Hannah, and led her away. On the way, he asked Hannah, "How about I take you home?" He rode his bike to a villa area, stopped, and asked Hannah, "Which one is your house?" Hannah giggled, "I don't live here. I lied to you before. After you used to take me home, I would secretly take the bus back." Emmett's face grew even darker. "Then which direction is your actual home?" He twisted and turned through the most dilapidated area of H City. Hannah pointed to a small, shabby house by the roadside that looked like it was sinking into the ground and said, "This is my home." Emmett finally snapped. He slapped Hannah, then slapped himself, and shouted loudly, "You've made me suffer so much with your lies. If I had known your house looked like this, I would never have pursued you. Haven't I had enough of living in such a place? I thought I could escape this kind of life through you, but in the end, I'm still just a rat in the gutter. If I had known earlier, I might as well have put all my energy into studying. Hannah was half crazed, giggling as she said, "You want to live in a villa? Then you should have pursued Mia. Actually, I lied to you. That house belongs to Mia's family. It's a shame you hate ugly girls the most, right? Mia is so ugly. She's nowhere near as pretty as I am." Emmett sneered at her words, turned around, picked up a discarded mirror from the grass, and held it up in front of Hannah. "You're not much of a beauty yourself, fatty." Hannah let out a scream and covered her eyes. Emmett threw the mirror aside, climbed onto his bicycle in a daze, and as he turned at the intersection, a sharp screech of brakes was heard. A truck driver yelled at him, "Are you blind?" Emmett slumped on the roadside, crying in despair. Hannah stumbled into the house, and as the sky darkened, a sinister figure quietly slipped inside. Curses and the sounds of a physical struggle came from the dark room, and soon, Hannah's voice was suppressed. A concerned person called the neighbors, kicked the door open, and turned on the light. Hannah's hands and feet were tied, her clothes torn open. Jack's eyes were bloodshot, his face covered in scratches. A kind-hearted person, that is, me, immediately asked the neighbors to restrain the suspect and called the police. The day before happened to be Jack's 18th birthday, so he was definitely going to prison. Hannah had regained her composure and asked coldly, "Why didn't you stay outside a little longer? If Jack had succeeded, it would have completely ruined me." I said, "In that case, what's the difference between you and me?" "Hannah, you should learn a lesson from this. Jack was willing to be your pawn because he had ulterior motives. Today was just the moment he finally seized the opportunity. Don't think about using anyone. In the end, you're the one who gets played." I got into Harvard again as I wished, received the acceptance letter, and opened it with great care. The scenery by W. Lake. I finally had the chance to see it this time. Holding the admission letter, I climbed back onto the rooftop from which I had jumped in my previous life. It was just evening, and the clouds on the horizon were shifting through various colors, with the orange glow of the sunset shining on me. As I was admiring the view, someone hurriedly ran up behind me. He shouted loudly, "Mia, stop, don't move." I looked back at Frank in confusion. He had run so frantically that he was covered in sweat. Against the light, I couldn't see his expression clearly. It wasn't until he walked up to me, tightly grabbing my arm, and I saw his pained expression that I suddenly understood. "Frank, have you also been reborn?" "What do you mean?" "Me too, you." He paused mid-sentence, then exclaimed, "Oh my, the bodhisattva at that temple is truly miraculous." We sat down on an abandoned bench on the rooftop, and Frank began telling me about his past life. "After you passed away, I was filled with regret. I thought, you must have felt abandoned by the whole world back then, and I did nothing for you. Grandma noticed I was sleeping all day at home and guessed what was on my mind. She took me to the temple where she often goes for vegetarian meals. I didn't believe it at first, but she insisted I go, so I went and, following her advice, offered incense to the bodhisattva." I cowed out earnestly, recalling all the things we had experienced together since childhood, and thought to myself, what more could I do for you? If there was something I could do for you, I would be willing to sacrifice something. At that moment, a voice whispered in my ear, "As you wish." I thought I was hallucinating and didn't take it seriously, but then it spoke again, this time in English, saying, "As you wish. Do you understand?" Frank clapped his hands and exclaimed, "Mia, even modern bodhisattvas are bilingual." I held back my laughter because the system whispered in my ear. That day I happened to be learning English and couldn't resist. Since he knew I hadn't come up to jump off the building, Frank wiped the sweat from his forehead and calmly took in the view from the rooftop. We were silent for a while, and then he asked me, "Why did you come up here?" I said, "Because I don't want to carry the shadows of my past life into college." I looked at the fading light in the sky and whispered softly, "I want to remember the bright and splendid scenery in my heart." He nodded and said, "It's a pity that I'll be studying abroad after the summer break. If you hadn't gotten into Harvard, the place you've dreamed of since childhood, I would have dragged you along to study overseas." I patted him on the shoulder and said, "Fate will bring us together again." He also encouraged him, "University abroad isn't easy either. You have to work hard. As a Chinese international student, you mustn't let our country down." As it grew dark, we supported each other down the dimly lit stairwell. Frank said, "Shall we go eat spicy hot pot at the entrance of our elementary school? And your favorite little bookstore is still open, you know." Before the third grade of elementary school, Frank and I were best friends. Both our parents, fearing we might develop extravagant habits due to our well-off family backgrounds, didn't give us much more pocket money than other kids. We often pooled our money to buy a bowl of spicy hot pot to share, but sometimes, when there was an interesting novel Frank had to suppress his cravings and obediently spend his pocket money. If only there were no diseases. Although my scores were high enough to get into popular departments like Harvard, I still chose medical school. In the future, I want to become a pediatrician and also research childhood leukemia, because there are millions of little MIAs in the world whose happy lives have been taken away by illness during college. I founded a public welfare club and, together with my classmates, showed care and support for sick children. I was fortunate to be born into a wealthy family, but there are many children from impoverished backgrounds who, once they fall ill, are easily abandoned and are in great need of external help. Illness is a rare occurrence, with a small number of children bearing the brunt of most of the world's cruelty. For the things I love, no amount of hardship feels like too much. Before I knew it, I had already earned my PhD. I returned to H City to give a medical lecture and visited the children's ward. In the hallway, I unexpectedly ran into Hannah, who was working as a cleaner. Our eyes met, and she hurriedly tried to avoid me but ended up knocking over a bucket. I don't know what she went through after failing the college entrance exam. Hannah hung her head low, but there was nowhere to hide. Finally, she looked up at me with a bitter smile and said, "No, you must feel very pleased. Go ahead and laugh if you want," but I replied seriously, "There's nothing to laugh about. As long as one lives with integrity, they deserve respect." Hannah was stunned, as if she hadn't expected me to respond that way. Just then, a child walked up to her and said sweetly, "Auntie Hannah." "Hello." Hannah responded to her softly, then packed up her things and walked away. The nurse accompanying me nearby told me, "This woman is not our cleaner. A few years ago, her child was hospitalized with leukemia. It was so heartbreaking. Such a beautiful little girl. In the end, it was your foundation's donation that saved her. She seems to care deeply about this and insists on repaying the hospital by volunteering to clean. She's a good person, and the children in the ward really like her." Time flies, and it turns out she has become a mother now. I don't know what opportunity led Hannah, who was once driven by vanity and completely abandoned her conscience, back onto the right path in life. I don't see Frank often. He is dedicated to rural education and spends most of the year in remote villages across different regions. However, whenever he gets the chance, he calls me and tells me about his experiences. Yesterday, a student told me he was going to a banquet and would save some food for me. Wow, he actually brought a whole basin with him. I heard others saying they would take the leftovers home to feed their dogs. "And my dear student," he shouted loudly, "don't fight with me. I want to give it to my teacher." I was already laughing uncontrollably on the other end of the phone. Frank pretended to be angry, remained silent for a moment, but couldn't help saying, "Mia, do you hear the birds chirping? It's getting dark. The little birds are calling their friends to go home. I will also return as soon as possible. Happy 3rd anniversary. I love you." After hearing the stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.